I can't mute myself, can I? If I'm gonna speak. So yeah. No, I can't. But let me see if my microphone is working. Can someone verify? Because now I'm streaming both on two platforms, So I need to know. I need to know if the sound is good. Sound is good. Let me see. Shit. Let me see if the sound is good on TikTok. I hope I'm being heard. Let me see. It's I'm being heard, right? I'm being heard, right? Yep, it's working. The sound is working, and I had to verify since. Thank you very much for not assisting me in the testification of. I'm just making up words now. Testing the microphone. Let me see. Let me put on some light so people can see me well. Let me open a window. Let me crack a window. Now I can see my beautiful face, huh? So yes, I'm streaming both to the YouTube and to the TikTok. So then, so that people know that that's what we're doing. And let me see. Let me open the fucking studio and see. Let me see the live. Well, it connects to the live stream. There you go. Perfect. What's up, world? Another day, another challenge. It always takes a few seconds, to set up. Even though I should have been setting up or sort out my bullshit before I usually come online, but sometimes it doesn't happen that way. You have to come on, then find out that things don't work accordingly. So therefore, you must do your due diligence and then make things work. But so the topic of today, is one that has been in my mind for a long time, and it was something between Islam and Arabization, the Arabization of Africa or non-Arabic lands, and I think I've landed on Arabization instead because I think that is the problematic aspect of expansionism rather than the problem being the religion itself. So that is why and how I ended up here to begin with. So let me see. Let's share to some friends and family. So let me see. I hope the YouTube is working too. So do correct me if my YouTube isn't working as it's supposed to. Then I will fix the YouTube as much as possible. Hello, Purpose.
Hello, Victory. Good afternoon.
Morning, good afternoon, good
Good
evening.
morning. Yeah. Greetings.
Many greetings to you, my friend. How do you do
Greetings
this
to you.
morning?
I do good. I'm well. I'm just relaxing. Still drinking coffee. I don't know why. I've had 2 cups of coffee today.
It's necessary, Sometimes you need to wake up,
Definitely, yeah.
and I myself, have to drink something, to some kind of substance to wake me up. Yeah.
I know. Waking up is in for me. It takes 2 hours. So if I have to do something in the morning, get ready for my daily routine, I have to get up 2 hours earlier to just be online because I can be awake but offline.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I know that feeling, and I myself have been. You have to wake up before you wake up. It is
That's
something like that.
definitely true.
Oh man, I have been looking into my notes, and I can
Yeah.
see that this topic has been in my timelines for at least 6 months.
Ooh.
Yeah, but it's one thing that has been like you have to, do it right because a certain group of people might feel some type of way when you speak about Arabization of people, but it's interchangeable. People will rather think that you are talking about Islam, and in many cases, when you do a deeper dive, you see that the problem is with the cultural aspect of Islam rather than the scriptures itself. But also, it's debatable. I'm not gonna be here and be afraid to speak my mind, but it is debatable. But mainly, the problem is with the Arabization of many African countries. But are the Muslims in South Africa?
Oh, definitely they are. They're everywhere, but they're not. They're not so loudly present, but they are. It's more or less like they're more in Europe now and in America, but they're everywhere in Africa, but they're not screaming out loud. But they're obviously planting their seeds.
Mm, I see, I see. But are there many South Africans whom are Muslim?
A few are actually, yeah.
Mm, okay, okay. Because when you talk about the South Africans, usually you don't. Islam is it's not one that comes in mind. You only the Zionist Church or the
Hmm.
Church of Zion or whatever it is, and other similar, how would I call it, Christian faith based religions are the ones that come in mind, but not Islam per se.
They're everywhere because we have a decent number of Somalis, and hence we have Islam sleeping there a little bit. It's not sleeping, but it's somehow like an inactive uh, a group of people that is, yeah, has set root on the land.
So, talking about the spread of Islam and the spread of Arab culture, do you find it to be problematic?
Um, it is definitely problematic. We can't avoid what it entails. Truly, it can't. It spreads. It tells the society or the world that it spreads peace, but it's about dominion. It's about domination and taking. Wanting to be on the upper hand or the upper hand, having the upper hand in society, and imposing on their beliefs and their religion on the people, and is to ensure that they can get as many people as possible. So it is problematic.
Mm. Yeah, I for one find Arabization, as the fella put it, that it is as old as Egypt itself, and which is true. You find out that the conquest of Arabian culture has wiped out the how do you call it, the organic identity of those who would now claim to be, or most of the people who now claim to be Arab. That when you see it originally, they are not organic Arabs, and that's one thing that is true. You see people like in Somalia, Sudan, and so on, who are sometimes Kushtic in origin, but then because of assimilation in terms of religion, they now say that they are Arab because it's better than being what you originally are. And when we talk about colonization and the African mentality, an African claiming to be something foreign, for me, I don't see it as different than a, let's say, West African saying I am British or French. And in that regard, I see that to be the disease that plagues the mind of many Africans or West Africans or North Africans or Africans in general. But then we ask ourselves, how do we deconstruct from such ideology? Do you have a go to mode in how to deconstruct from said ideology?
It's very interesting because it stems from so many things. It stems from colonization, it stems from racism and all the politics of the world. There's this thing in Africa where everything foreign, everything different, everything that is a bit different is more acceptable, is more attractive. On a social scale. For example, if you've mentioned it clearly, we could have European. passports, but we're not Europeans, we're still Africans. And regardless of the circumstances, no matter what happens, especially in Europe, eh, when you appear as a black man with a European passport, you're just another, you're not just another African or another black person. You're not considered as that. But in Africa, it's the other way around. It's this need for, when something is foreign, it's attractive. If you go to a restaurant and you have a different accent, they accept you more. In South Africa, it's a thing right now. If you have sound different on the phone, you book for a table, they will pick you up quickly. South Africans are not getting into restaurants these days. In Cape Town, it's a disaster, and it will take a lot of time to deconstruct from this, because talk about the beauty standards, everything European, everything white appearing, everything white looking. Women are bleaching their skin, the synthetic hair. We can talk about wigs, that's a different conversation. But the whole bit of just being different or being European or white identifying is more appreciated. And this is where the problem lies.
Mm.
We need to deconstruct from that. We need to leave that and appreciate our own identity. And we should not be allow ourselves to be ashamed or to be shamed for our identity, because our identity is really beautiful. It's natural as it is. It's amazing.
Hello, Benji. How do you do, Benji? I see it's mentioning your name in the comment
Hello,
section.
Benji.
Yeah,
We greet you.
we greet you. So, when we speak of Arabization, it refers to the process through which a non-Arab person adopts Arabic language, culture, or identity. But when I speak of that, I am against the adoption of foreign, call it social norms or language, in terms of Africans who have been, you know, as a what's it? Says choosing to learn Arabic as a non as a Muslim is a blessing. It says linguistics. I think it says English language is more oppressive. I, for one, think they are both of them are as oppressive. It depends on who holds the button or who presses on the button. It's not something that we are not sitting here judging what is lesser evil, but to us, evil is evil, depending on how you use it. So, for example, I remember when Ibrahim Touare took over power in his country, and he wants to do good for his country. The Arab nation and the Arab League wanted to offer him mosques at a time where he needs other things than mosques. And then it begs the question, why is it that when Africans want to do something good for themselves, when Africans want to progress, all of a sudden it is religious progression is the first and the most prominent or primitive ways for them to progress. That you have to first progress in terms of religion, then you can progress other ways. But we find ourselves that no one else does it that way. So I
It's the
hope.
old playbook. It's the old playbook that is still at play right now. And when they can use these tools with like religion to impose on people, and they can welcome it into a country, then there's benefits of association and of affiliation to this particular religion. Um, Look at South Sudan or Sudan rather. What's happening there? Recently, there was a genocide. There's a genocide going on right now. Currently, I saw on the news that, of course, the UAE is doing what it's doing best in Sudan, and it's heartbreaking to see.
Mm,
And the people in Sudan have accepted this. They want to identify so much so as with Islam or being Muslim or being Arabic or being whatever that religion is. So much so that to their detriment, unfortunately. And it's heartbreaking, because why can they not wake up to what is on the ground? That association does not bring any benefits to the Africans at all. It brings torment and destruction and loss of lives, and not developing at the end of the day, but just destruction.
I think for those who want to be associated with a foreign identity, for them it brings some kind of benefits. in terms of what you can get in life, in terms of how do you call it in English, privileges. It brings privileges and perks. That's the reason why people keep associating, because once, and I see this a lot in hyper societies where they are hyper, how do you call it, they put hyper fixation on such association, like in Somalia, in Burkina Faso, Mali, where the more Arabic presenting you are, the more authentic Muslim you are, which is wrong, and it's become so bad that when in many cases African modesty becomes, how do I call it, sub modest, that it is not modest enough, even though it follows the criteria. So that African Muslims who find themselves to dress modestly in terms of what the religion that they how do you call it, believe in, or they subscribe to, prescribes, but because their aesthetics doesn't fit the narratives of the Arabs, then all of a sudden it is uh, not good enough, and that is one of the problems that many Muslim Africans face. And you know, to the women itself, you know, when someone beautiful put it that, why do Muslim men hate their women, you know, and then when you intensify that, then it comes to Africans. If Muslim women are hated, then what about African women whom are Muslim? You know, they will be hated twice as much or three times as much, and you find yourself that if, for example, uh, Muslim women whom are African have to find uh, a mosque to pray in, many times they first have to make sure that mosque is black friendly, you know, before they decide. Yeah, imagine that. You know, you have to make sure that it is friendly to the skin color that you have before you even look to be part of that mosque. And I think that is, it is very 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 significant when people claim that it is a religion for everyone, but do not act that way. You know, and it's one thing that I find to be very particular. You know, that despite where you go, because of the arrogance that brings that many Arabs have. You know, you've heard the incidents of Porta Party where people, you know, are used as toilets, human toilets, and so on, because of money and so on. Then when an African wants to be rich, then richness is the ultimate, the peak of richness is being what an Arabic sheikh is. And I think that speaks volume, you know. And it's like, if we are going to have Christianity or Muslim Islam within our borders, it has to come. Okay, okay, I see you, Miss Becca. Of course, of course. Join shortly. You know, prepare yourself. You know, the live isn't going nowhere. We just started. The live is going nowhere. So prepare yourself and join
Oh,
whenever
I
you
can't
feel
wait
like.
until she jumps on. I can't wait to hear her perspectives. I read her thesis. Yeah, I didn't read the last bits because it was just references. Very, very interesting the way she wrote it. Very interesting.
It is an interesting how do you call it, writing that she put beautifully. And we see Nigeria, for example, to be one of the nations or the countries that are how do I call it, it's a result of such Arabization, where Islam became an alternative to the colonizers or the Western colonizers' religion. So, since Africans have forgotten that, okay, Arabs did colonize many parts of Africa, and Christian colonization was more fresh in their mind, being Muslim was the alternative. So then, being Arab presenting or Arab life was like a salvation compared to what Christianity gave. So then I heard one of these people who are destructive to the society of Nigeria, because since we are streaming on multiple platforms, we know those who have T's in their names, um, and in which he said that The reason why I fight against these people is because they subscribe to a colonizers, a foreign religion, which is Christianity. Then it begs the question: is Islam then a religion native to your people, or is one that was adopted either through conquest or through own volition? But it's like it's funny to me that we or people who believe in a language, in I say language, even people who do believe in or subscribe to a religion are oftentimes more atheist against the other religion, that we are atheists to all religions but our own.
It's the seeds were planted a very long time ago, and I believe the the Arab invasion of the African continent was uh, happened a little bit earlier, perhaps when the trade was happening with Africa, and those seeds were planted, and then it opened room for the Europeans to come in, and the Americas and the Europeans to come in and then take over that bit. I saw a report about Mauritania. Did you see it? Where there's black Arabs and then Arab Arabs looking people, and the Arabs looking people want to have a country of their own within Mauritania. Incredible.
Yeah, and that is the problem, because so far as there are such social hierarchies and there are differentiations within people, then you see that Islam isn't a unifying religion for those who subscribe to it. Because, and I always say this, if Islam is a solution to a problem, and the problem being, let's say, people are warring and so on, then such solutions should be able to fix the problem. But then we find ourselves that it's in many cases it becomes a problem in its own. It intensifies or create new problems altogether. And you find Somalia, for example, and it's one that I'm gonna do a dedicated session for Somalia, where, for example, that there are almost non-existent Somalian Christians, and prior to the Islamification of Somalia, Somalia was had Christians. So then either they were, I remember, you remember during 2012, that era where there was a lot of online live events on Facebook Live, where these groups that find themselves in Somalia started unaliving people just because they were Christian.
I did see this on Facebook. Yeah, this
Oh,
was
it was a time where people were mass unalive just for stupid reasons, and it's one that is scary, that if and the fact that we have seen it play out in numbers where people are unalive just because they have a different faith, and people can't live in harmony. Therefore, it begs the question: if one says, I either forbid the expansion of, let's say, a religion, Islam, in my borders, are they wrong to forbid such expansion?
they're not forbidden to to impose this. We need to look at the bigger picture. If this is why I always support Christianity, even if it has its own follow-ups. With Islam, it's about domination and elimination. If you do not say yes, we'll eliminate you. But also, when they dominate or they come into a country, look at what's happening currently in Europe and in Britain. They want to introduce Sharia. Since I started speaking German, my English is really
Sharia,
terrible. Yeah,
Sharia law.
yeah, they want to impose this in Britain now, and I think the whole idea is to cast it out and spread it the whole entire world. And this is what the world should look out for. But if they're going to go on the false principle of inclusion and one religion and accepting that Islam is the right thing or is the right way, you need to nip the baby in the butt before it grows. So before it sets root, it needs to be nipped in the butt quickly.
I understand what you're saying. The what is for me my problem with Sharia, the Sharia law is this: those who in many times impose those laws, they don't want the laws to be imposed onto them. It's like they don't follow the same ruling. So, for example, I since I am let's call it for the lack of better term, if I am a Sharia police, just because I uphold the laws of Sharia, I can do what I want, whatever I want. But you can't do. You that I'm opposing the law can't do whatever you want. You have to follow or be in the ramifications of the law, and that in itself is problematic. But because one thing I find out is this: that people who are for those laws, if you ask them that do you want to be judged by such law, most of them will run away. They will say no, because they know that it is the how to call it, the sequence in which how would I call it, judgment has to take place in many times is long and lengthy, and they want instant how do I call it, gratification, where they can just go on and say, you know what, I saw you do this, it is haram, now I'm gonna allow you. So they become the judge, jury, and executioner on the spot, which in many cases I find to be problematic. And then the actions or the judgment in which they are dishing out or giving out, even just according to the Sharia law that they claim to hold. And it's one thing that is very interesting, that you find that most of them don't want to be judged by the same Sharia law, but they want others to be judged because they like seeing it being done. But and it's something about being what people find themselves to be organic Muslims, and it's one thing I find out, that people feel that way, that I am organic Muslim because Islam originated from my called my tribe, or my peninsula, where the others are like converts or reverts or whatever they are. So it's like being a Muslim with a different skin tone. It's like you finding foreigners in Europe. Like, how long have you been a Muslim? You know, or or other things like did you converted or whatever it may be. It's like people don't automatically assume that you might be born as a Muslim, or you've been a Muslim, or your family has been Muslims for generations. No, they automatically assume in many to many extent that you are convert or revert, and I think it's very very funny to me how human play these hierarchy games, in order to show dominance and dominion over others. But I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Should post-colonial states, like let's say Ghana, Nigeria, Uganda, Sudan, as you say, prioritize unity over, or should they prioritize diversity, and focus that they are more on their diversity, or focus to be a unified country?
Focusing on being a unified country is has so many layers to it, and you can't employ diversity when these communities that are already in these countries are already broken. We need to get to the grassroots of the issue. We can't scream oneness. Look at South Africa, rainbow nation, really rainbow nation. The disparities in South Africa are heartbreaking. You There's communities for everybody. Everybody has small little communities of their own. The Pakistani, the Indians, the coloreds, the white people, the black South Africans, and the other Africans in South Africa. There's no unity. It's just out on the field. When we look at the country, it's a rainbow nation. In reality, on the ground, it's not pleasant. So we cannot focus on preaching oneness right now, because we need to do our homework, and we need to fix the charity at home. We need to clean our houses first before we can establish unity.
I agree with you, but it's like this. I think either or is gonna be difficult. The reason being that the fact that we all have different religions, or we have different faiths, is the reason in which unity won't be achieved. Because without it being said loudly, we see each other as our own enemies. What the hell is happening? Um, in many cases, for example, if someone is a Christian, and the fact that Christians are being subdued by Muslims, people who I fear that trying to be adjacent to Muslims could be something detrimental because of the fear, and it being real or non-real is the reason why I would rather want to be for myself than to be with those people. You know how they are, and those are the comments and rhetorics that usually come. You know how Muslims are, you know how Christians are. They are this, they are that, and all of a sudden, there's more division than one that we can fix. So
Definitely.
go
But
ahead, go
this
ahead, please.
playbook has already been put in place. This playbook has already been put in place, and it's the people need to wake out of this playbook and realize that it's not benefiting anybody. It does not support the end goal of anything. And the problem also with radical Christianity and radical Islam, we can't tell the difference. If you say, "Oh, I'm a Christian," we don't know really your views. If you say I'm Muslim, we don't know if you're an extremist. So there's this, oh, watch out for the others, watch out for the neighbors, watch out for the black people, watch out for the white people, watch out for the coloreds, watch out for this.
Yeah, I agree with you in that regards, and I think that is what, and that is what it has led us to this live today, where we speak about the pressure of a culture over religion. Many Africans who find themselves to be Christian today usually also do things which are not Christian. Uh, but usually it's not even in the Bible. But just because the Romans did it or the Europeans did it, all of a sudden we are doing it, like celebrating Christmas, because the Europeans did it. So therefore, we find ourselves doing the same. And these things are very, very intertwined. Arabization and Westernization of people, and I think it's gonna be the next live, of being Westernization since it follows suit with Arabization. And in with that said, we find ourselves. No, I lost my train of thought, but I'm gonna rewind back. I'm gonna bring it back. We find ourselves in situations where trying to be a unified country is impossible because we don't agree on the common things. It being or having tolerance for other people's religion, accepting the fact that there are people who are indifferent to you, and those things, if a society is not able to achieve and hold that view, then that society is going to collapse. And usually you find yourself in situations like Mali, that when there are people or men within the nation, within fighting, how do you call it, fighting age, who holds the view that it is their duty to spread the Arabic culture. It is their duty to spread Islam, and if it might be, we will use violence if needs to be. Then you find yourself, so sooner that there is a hands at play, all of a sudden it's easier to. Someone called me. Sorry. All of a sudden, it is easier to buy their loyalty, because I find myself to be assimilated with the enemies of this nation just because we have the same faith, and I think those are dangerous views to hold, because it is quick to for a nation to descend into chaos like Nigeria, to descend into chaos like Sudan, to descend into chaos like Mali, to descend into chaos like Burkina Faso, and the northern parts of Ghana, and so on, because of, let's say, tribal disputes, which are therefore intensified by religious divisions. So let me stop.
The one thing we can learn or we can take away from white people is they love each other. That's what we can't take away from them. I have seen this firsthand in two parts of the world. I've seen this in South Africa when the white Zimbabweans were kicked out, they came to South Africa and they were welcomed by the Afrikaans. They were welcomed. They were given pieces of land. They were shared out. Was shared out with them. They started running their business, and some went back to the United Kingdom. It's the same thing in Europe. At work, a Polish guy came to work. He couldn't speak German. The German colleagues, white colleagues, were very friendly to him, very welcoming. They were supporting him, showing him how things are run. Oh, the other people were not really treated well, not in a bad way, but you could see the lack of interest towards other people. So it's one thing to learn from as Black people. We need to understand that. Let's put our differences aside. There's different kinds of Black people. There's African Americans. There's Black from the Caribbean and the African people and other parts of the world there's Black people. These Black people need to understand. Okay, we have our histories, we have our problems, we have our issues. Let's put that aside and let's try to work together, and we'll figure it out at the end of the day. It's like building momentum. Oh, I want to discipline myself to stop doing this. I want to do this. You have to start until you can draw discipline from that. You can't just draw discipline. Suddenly you have discipline from something new. You need to start slowly. So we won't find a solution right away, but we need to get started. But getting started is a problem because people's minds are not yet open enough to allow for discourse, for regardless of the differences that we may have.
Well, it is true. And when I see, even within my own family, when we speak of unity, where in many cases, we are not divided in terms of that we disagree, but usually religion and assimilation in particular is the reason why we oftentimes find ourselves divided, because why would I listen to you where I don't see you as equal to, or in many cases I will listen to you because you are above me, or you are associated to, let's say, an aesthetic. If one can put it, like, let's say if it should be Arab presenting and so on, and I think that those are the things that we find ourselves to be always intertwined or entangled in conflict, or it brings forth conflict, because it's always a two-headed sword, where when people migrate, because mind you, Arabization also spread through migration, that people who migrate actually speak in German, let's say Germany, but then find themselves in foreign lands, but because of arrogance, you know then find out it is my duty to spread my religion within the new lands that I find myself, and people stop acting as guests. You know, there was one commentator who put this, that what makes religion dangerous, it's not the fact that let's say it says go onto this world and divide and conquer or something like that, but it is the fact that believers who are idiots, all of a sudden it gives them some kind of confidence, and with that confidence, it brings about bad habits, and that is the problem of when idiots subscribe to ideologies. Just because they are idiots, they have that confidence, and once they get the approval or stamp from a god, all of a sudden, then you have situations where you find in Somalia, you have situations where you find in Burkina Faso or Mali, you find situations that you find in Nigeria, because you have idiots with confidence.
At at a homestead level, we would say there's a lot of projection from other people. I have very different views from my family members, and I don't have not a very good relationship with some of my family members because of my views. They're very stern, they're very direct. I'm not filtering anything through. So, coupled with the fact that when people want to dominate other people at a household level, or they do not agree with you, or they're intimidated by your perspective, they will project to you. They don't mean exactly what they are communicating to you, but it's more or less so to just trying to pin you down. So I will bash you to pin you down and not argue with you to a point of finding a solution, try to meet you in the middle. We can't always be right. We agreed on this line. We don't always agree with each other, but we're not bashing each other or insulting each other. So it's about when someone is losing an argument, they will project. And hence, we have these problems. And I like the fact that you mentioned that bits and part of when it was backed up by God. You know, people have abused the name of God or the name of Allah, whoever people are worshiping these days. Oh, it's because the book says this and that. Oh, I will bash you. I will call you names. Or you know the African bits where people will dress in a certain way, or they look, or they're immoral. We'll label people, or they're immoral, or they're not appropriately, or they don't behave appropriately, or they're this and they're that. The name calling, all backed by the book said so. What are your own opinions about this subject?
Hello to Scott and Miss Beck. How do you do?
I'm good, man. How you guys doing today?
We are beautifully fine. Oh, I'm beautifully fine.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I'm just making coffee here. It's really early in the morning on a Sunday, but
Yeah,
I'm
you should
glad
wake up
glad to be
early.
listening.
You should wake up
Yeah,
early. Yeah.
yeah. Talk to me in about 10 minutes.
No,
I'll
no,
be
just do
listening.
you. Just do you. Just do you first. Hello, Miss Becca. How do you do?
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Very well. Very interesting conversation.
Yeah, it's one that needs to be had. It's one that needs to be had because it is of highly of interest, and it's one of as I said has been in my head for the longest, but it is now that I'm finding the time to have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have been listening so far. Is there anything you want to input before we move on?
Yeah, I don't even know where to start, but I think I'll start from, you know, the point that the most popular religions in Africa, for example, are foreign to Africa. So the idea of this post-colonial project is not even post-colonial because we're still colonial. It's something that is very troubling to me as an African. And I think like if all Africans like if we are able to have these conversations and sort of understand that if you want to practice a religion, you cannot put the religion's interest. I think that's where Islam, greatly differs from Christianity, is that Islam is not just a religion, it's a political identity. It's a political strategic tool of global domination. And unfortunately, Africa is like a testing ground for this sort of practices of dominating by any means necessary, destroying, doing whatever it needs to be done for the sake of some guy, some fictitious character. And it's very problematic to me, something that is missing even in the academic context because people are usually scared of talking. If you've noticed, people will easily bash Jesus Christ, but nobody would dare. And they've successfully sort of silenced everybody where now there's a term called Islamophobia just to shut you up, when the reality of the experiences of African, even in Europe, when you look at some cities in Europe, like you start to worry about, in my own personal observation, like I always tell Europeans, you people should learn from what's happening in Africa. If but but when you've also colonized a place, you think that you have the master tool. But I think the Arabization, as you've called it, of this region of Africa has been so perfected that it even now makes me understand colonization. I'm not sure if colonization of Africa by the Europeans was in the same magnitude of violence, but it's actually scary. So yeah, I think I would stop here for now.
Yeah, I think the colonization of Africans by the Westerners is as detrimental to as if I say the Arab colonization.
Is
Uh,
anybody speaking? I can't hear. Can you hear me?
oh, sorry, I muted myself. So I was gonna say that the colonization of Africans by Europeans is as detrimental as the Arab colonization. So I don't think even it comes close to differentiating that both of them as evil. We have times and places where civilization have been wiped out, non-existent because of the spread of one's ideology and beliefs.
I
So,
don't know
so
if I agree with that. And it's not because I was born a Christian. I don't know if I agree that
hold on, let me mute myself.
Christianity was. I'm not sure that I agree that Christianity was as violent, just based on historical documentation of what Christianity was. It came through this deception of, saving us, teaching us the right way, bringing us a God from Israel, even though we're Africans. But I don't know if it was the same way. And I think, speaking as a Nigerian, right? And speaking as somebody who's from a country where there's a region of Nigeria where I cannot go to. Even if I go, I'm so uncomfortable in my own country. There's a region of Nigeria where, and as I wrote in my paper, it's so different such that people who practice Islam outside of the north are so different that they are like two different people. And so for me, like what I was talking about in my paper, what I see in the northern Islam, which is the radical Islam, which came from the Arabs, and what everybody else in the south of Nigeria who are Muslim practice, you can clearly see a difference. And for me, that's where I learned that Islam is actually not a religion. It's a political it's a political identity that is extremely violent, in my opinion. And as my friend told me, people who talk about Islam and Muslims don't understand Islam. If you want to understand Islam, speak to an ex-Muslim, because when people talk about Islam, they don't read the Quran, they don't read the other book, I don't remember what it's called. If you read it as a historical book, read it outside of the sentiment of religion, I have never seen such violence. I've seen violence in the Bible. It's extremely violent as well. But the difference between, in my own personal opinion, Islam and Christianity, or the Bible, so to speak, is that Christianity or the Bible comes to a point where it said all of those violence, all of those things that we did, those sacrifice of people and destruction of places are no longer relevant from this point on. And that's where you have the New Testament and all of that. That does not exist in Islam. And people also need to understand that when you read the Quran, it is literal. When you speak to the people who are being killed in the north, when you speak to people who are afraid, there are people that are Nigerians, that are Christians, that they've eradicated. So when you go to the north of Nigeria and somebody's telling you, oh, I'm a northerner, they don't look Nigerian, you're Arab. And when you understand the playbook of how this was played in North Africa and how they radically erased, and now you have all this, you have mummies with broken nose because they cannot show you that a mummy in North Africa, for example, was a black person. So they have to break the nose and tell you this fictitious story that makes absolutely no sense, that can never be scientifically proven, that the people in North Africa today are the original North African. It is a lie. It's scientifically a lie. Nobody can prove it.
If I can object to something, because that's something that you said that I felt interesting, and I want to. Yes, the last thing you said about the people in North Africa are not the original ones. That is true. But there's one thing that you said about Christianity not being as evil as Islam, and it's one thing that I'll tell you as a person who have read the Bible, live with Christians. If we are going to how will I say it, categorize evil, I would say they are equally as detrimental, because they all have the same foundation. So when people who find themselves to believe in one religion, let's say Christianity or Islam, we easily find ourselves to be atheists or automatically against the other religion. We all of a sudden shut our eyes to the how do you call it, the teachings of other religions. I for one don't,
I
and
disagree.
when we talk about colonization being the tool, or Christianity being the reason why the Catholic Church use it as a justification for Christians to go out and crusade and enslave Africans. They use the Bible as a justification. the tools of the justification. So I for one would say it's as evil as any other religion that uses their religion as a tool of justification. But when you go to churches, there's a reason why they don't teach you these things that Christians used to use the Bible as a tools of justification of slavery.
Well, the point is, I understand what you're talking about in slavery. I'm speaking more of from a perspective of the sheer violence, and I've read the Bible. I was born a Christian. I'm no longer a Christian. I'm also now an atheist. But I came to the point that I came to when I read the Bible as a book. It didn't make sense to me, right? But I'm just saying, honestly, if anybody wants to be honest, read the Bible as a book, like a history book of some kind, and read the Quran example and document the sheer amount of violence. Do you know? I was listening to a guy who's a northerner actually yesterday, and he was talking about how in the Quran, for example, women are there's a word he used, I don't remember, I think the footstool of men. The dehumanization of women is literal in Islam. In the Bible, we can argue now we're talking based on fact of what is documented, Bible, Quran. In Bible, we can argue that there are connotations. Women were not powerful figures. Women were not talked about, but they were not given as something that you can use. And I think there's a word he used, I think they are the footstool of, like, their lives are meaningless. Basically, it's literal in the Quran. And that's why I'm telling you that if you go on Google right now and type in Google, find the violent texts in the Bible, and do the same thing for the Quran. That's what I'm saying. Let's be factual. Let's not talk about things that we don't know or things that we've read in other historical books. I'm talking about the Bible versus the Quran, because to a Muslim in the north of Nigeria, and as somebody who's working in north of Nigeria, my own personal understanding is that there's no room for negotiation. There's no room for, oh, we brought you this God from Saudi Arabia and we're trying to convince you that you should accept it. It's not like that. It's by force. And it's by force to the point that you can be killed in a twinkling of an eye. They can stone you to death. During COVID, there's a Nigerian girl in Sokoto. She was born in Sokoto, the core north of Nigeria, and she was in a student academic group, not a religious group, academic group of her university, because people couldn't go to school. And because she's in a northern state that has been taken over by radical Islam, people were posting things about Islam. And at the point, all she said was, please, can we respect this space? This space is for a study group. It's not about, don't post things that does not concern me, because me too, I'm also here. And this is a study group. This is not a religious group. That's all she said in a group, in a WhatsApp group. They organized in minutes, found her, stoned her to death in front of the school security. People were watching this happen. Guess what? They arrested a couple of people because these people live streamed this thing and put it on social media so they could find them. They arrested them. Do you know that a judge in the north of Nigeria set those people free? Please tell me about how Christianity and Islam are the same thing. They are not the same. They are not.
Does anyone want to say so? You want me to read this passage in the Bible first?
If I could, Christianity in the Western world killed 100 million people. My people. So has Islam ever done a mass genocide like that?
Also, one would say that people who are Arab or who hold that faith have unalived people in that same regard. But you have to understand that when it comes to the killing of people, everybody killed everybody or have killed somebody. But
in the name of God.
In the name of God, yes. In the name of God.
Yeah.
But I wanted to read this passage because when we talk about decolonization from religion, or it's we have to be fair, especially people who have been on the shot receiving short stick, receiving fucking shot, receiving end of the stick. And the passage is this in the book of Deuteronomy, and it says this: when you go to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God believes them into your hand, and you take captives. If you notice the captives, well, fuck me. If you notice among the captives a beautiful woman, and and are and you are attracted to her, you may take her as your wife. And verses 12 says, bring her into your home and have her shave her head, trim her nails, and then put aside the clothes she was wearing when captured. After she have lived in your house and mourned her father and mother for a full month, then you may go ahead and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. This is the Bible that you claim might not be as evil as Islam. Because I see it as equal. The fact that Christians may find themselves, modern day Christians, to find themselves to be, let's say, more liberal to this day, which is it's easier to digest in our eyes, it doesn't change the fact that they share the same upbringing. That when it goes unchecked, it is detrimental to people who are vulnerable. And vulnerable people have been done bad things to, just in the name of expansion, in the name of cultural expansion or religious expansion. So I want you to if you want to speak more about how you find Christianity to be indifferent in terms of violence versus Islam, because I know that when it's like, how to say, the threshold, and I think this is the difference, the threshold in which people purpose in people who are in let's say Nigeria, northern states of Nigeria, unalive other people is maybe smaller than the threshold in which Christians would do so. Because of the way Christianity has been altered in order to fit that same narrative, that people will believe it to be more digestible. But you want to say something, Scott?
Yeah. The purpose they share, the Islam, Christianity, they share the same purpose, and that same purpose is control. Always has been, always will be. You control. The Knights Templar used God to control their own armies and to motivate them in times of battle. If you look back to the days of the Crusades, you have Saladin using God to unite the armies, to vilify the enemy. And Christianity's no different in that matter. They were unifying their armies with their God to fight their enemy, the Saracens, or Saladin's people. I think also it depends on where you are in the world. I'm sure in Africa there has been a more notable Islamic influence or Arab influence and towards religion or towards controlling the population, whereas in the Western world, in Canada and the United States, it was Christians who vilified the heathens and savages like me and they used their God to justify our genocide. So it's all about control. And it's always been about control, the colonization efforts that religion contributed towards, the controlling of the mass populations in our respective countries. Most here in it was more Christian than it was Islam. I've never had an Islamic person call me a savage, you know. So like it really does depend on your geographic location in order to really make sense of this. I believe Muhammad Ali kind of said it correctly when they were trying to draft him into the Vietnam War, and he's like, "Hey, ain't no Vietnamese man ever called me nigger," right? So I think it's all just very dependent on your geographic location and how that arc of religion that traveled the world affected you in that geographic location. Because here, Islam or Islamophobia or the notion of it has only been an issue within the last 20 years.
You know, Ms. Becker is saying that Christianity has rebranded itself. Do you mind speaking more onto how it has rebranded itself compared to what is classical Christianity and all classical Islam?
How it's rebranded itself. I think it's evolved over time, and the but like the purpose is still the same. The purpose doesn't really evolve that much. It's they'll adjust things, they'll make it more appeasable, they'll make it more ingestible for people to come over to their side of the argument or their side of their ideology. But I don't really think it's changed all that much. Like if you look at what Israel's doing right now, they've weaponized their religion for their purposes, but control is the end result of it. They want control. They want to control the way people think in order to sell their well, it's not really an ideology. It's more like an agenda or some sort of path towards getting what they want. So it's really the same. It hasn't really changed all that much. I know the schisms within the Christianity religions. There's so many. It's hard to maintain or even understand what one believes over the other. Like Mormons, how their Jesus is John Smith. I don't, I don't really understand it, and I'm not trying to. That's their right to believe that there's aliens involved, I think, too, something like that. I don't know. It's weird, but again, control. It's all about control.
Yeah, Miss Becca, are you there? Becca, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I wanted you to speak more of the aspect of you claiming Christianity has rebranded itself.
Well, it's very obvious that Christians, at least again, I speak in the context of Africa right now, are not killing people so they can convert to their religion. They did it in the past, but I'm speaking of right now. And to me, when I look at that, what I see is basically both religion is about domination. It's always been about influencing culture and how people live and all of that. But to me, they are not, they have the same agenda, but they don't have it, they don't have their violence in the same capacity. I would never agree with that. And unless you can show me in factual arguments, you know, another religion that is still eradicating, entering people's lands, killing of people, forcing them to convert to your religion so that you can fulfill the prophecy of Allah, unless you can show me right now, then my argument is proven that Christianity has managed to rebrand itself into this love filled identity. And let's even take it outside of the context of coexistence, right? Christianity in the context of Africa, or let me speak as a Nigerian, you will find Christians that are accepting or tolerating of things that the Bible is against. You will not find it in northern Nigeria. You will not find radical Islam. And when you look at, even in the same country of Nigeria, how people who are also Muslims, who are not from the north, who do not have the Arab identity of Islam, which is the radical Islam, they are rejecting that version of Islam, and they're saying, for us, our religion is more of, our culture is more important to us than Islam. You know, in my work, people were saying, I'm a Yoruba man first before I'm a Muslim. And because of the cultural dominance of my identity, if I ever have to choose between one thing or the other, I choose my culture. There were people who are religious figures in the south of Nigeria who were telling me, there was actually a man, he was an imam in Ibadan. He said to me, he took me to his backyard and he showed me like little children running around naked, playing. Many of them were girls. And then he was telling me about teaching me about his Yoruba culture, how in the Yoruba land, a person's body is not a commodity. It's actually frowned upon to harass a woman. And he said to me, the reason why we don't want them meaning the northerners who are displaced, who are coming here, many of them who are Muslims, we don't want them here because we want our children to be safe. You can see they're playing outside. Nobody's touching them. Nobody's kidnapping my 7-year-old granddaughter to go and marry her somewhere because it's the will of Allah. I'm a Muslim and I don't want that, you know. So when you look at that context, you cannot tell me that these two contexts are the same if a subgroup within the same group are saying we don't want this, you know. There are places within Nigeria that are actively against refugees from that region coming to their region. They are active. They don't allow it because they say,
If you allow me to answer your question, so I see what you are saying here, and I think Scott also do the same, that you don't see modern day Nigerian Christians doing the same things you see Muslims within the borders of Nigeria doing, and I get that. But one thing that it is proven and is evident is that Christianity or Islam is detrimental to the trajectory of African nations equally. Okay, there's no differentiating. You know, when it comes to Christianity, even though we don't see physical violence in the same way, there are one I would say there are non-physical violence in which you find Africans portraying upon other Africans. Okay, for example, in Ghana, we have what we call sexual violence, where you find priests whom find themselves in higher positions, where just because they are priests, they use their power to SA people, you know. So just because they are not out here kidnapping, they are framing their intentions as a willing, something that you willing to give your body to God, and I am the how do you call it, the spokesperson of God. Therefore, if you lie with me, that means God is receiving your body. I see it as equal evil as someone kidnapping someone's daughter, taking her someone else and marrying her off. You know, so for me, I don't make that distinction in certain way. I understand that these people are barbaric in nature, where they have an ideology to spread the religion in which they have inherited. Okay, but therefore, when they are spreading their religion, they take no regards to those whom are receiving. Their motto is to hurt everybody and to achieve their goal. But the matter of the fact is, most of the people who suffer in the hands of this Boko Haram and whatever it may be are also Muslims. You know, and that is also, I find that to be problematic, because then there's no finite way of being Muslim. It's whatever these groups determine to be at that given time.
Yeah, I was going to say something's very similar to that, where
I think it's very problematic to look at it that way, because if you look at it from the Nigeria's perspective, like nobody's looking at what's going on in Gaza and saying, yeah, let's compare it to, I don't know what else you can compare it to. These are situations. If the Muslims are being killed in Nigeria, and they are, but they are not comparable to the eradication of a total ethnic groups in all those places. And what you have to understand is that the north of Nigeria was not Muslim. The north of Nigeria was not those people. The people who now occupy it majoritarily were not the original people. So there's no comparison. And if the Muslims in the north are collateral damage, it is still the Muslims killing them. That's the point. So I don't think I think when we look at just the sheer violence, like nobody's looking at Gaza and saying, yeah, but people are not differentiating it. It's a genocide, it's happening. And we shouldn't compare it to anything and say, oh yeah, it's similar. No, it's not. Every time, like, I am immune to news from Nigeria, because like you open your phone, they're even killing the Nigerian army. So this violence, just because it's not very reported, it the sheerness, the heaviness of what is happening in Nigeria is something that if I were Ghanaian, I'll be very concerned. I'll be extremely concerned, because it's coming to you. You can't escape it. And the minute, the more we're talking about it so lightly, no, it's happening now. We're not talking about history.
I want to ask you a question. If sorry, Scott wanted to say something first. Let's hear from him before I ask you that question.
Again, I'm gonna maybe just post this question to you guys. Do imams, or have they been known for essaying kids?
Yes.
Okay, so
yeah.
Is there a national movement or some organization that they belong to that protects them from doing that?
When it comes to essaying of children, and I think something that is not unique to people who follow a specific religion, but it's something that is unique to people who find themselves in a higher position, where it's when you find yourself in an authoritative position, you then sometimes use your power to get what you want or what you need, unfairly. So I think it's more a problem with that. But then when you put yourself in assimilation to a religion, the trust is intensified, because you are supposed to be the better of the non-believers, or you're supposed to be better than the non-believers. So I think it hurts more when, let's say, you find yourself a pastor or an imam doing it.
Right. But is there, like, say, if in Christianity over the last 100 years or so, 200 years, there's been a movement within the Vatican to protect those abusers, to relocate them, to remove them from legal repercussions. Is that the same in the Muslim nations, kind of religious structure?
Without a direct answer to it, I would say that with for what I know, that if you are found to be essaying somebody that you are, or being with someone that you are married to, regardless of whether you're imam or not, it is strictly forbidden. So there
Not
is
in
Right.
Nigeria. Not in
no,
Nigeria.
but
Speak for Ghana.
that's what I'm
Speak for
saying. I'm
Ghana.
speaking. Listen. I'm speaking of as Islam as they speak in general. But what
That's not
people
true.
do in various pockets are different.
That's not true.
Well,
That's what
I'm
I'm
just
saying.
saying. My point to that is that the Vatican, they intentionally go out of their way to protect these abusers, to ensure that they can continue this these methods of abuse, and they do it and have been doing it for centuries. So is that a sign of violence within the religion?
Yeah, I would say so, because just because you are giving them amnesty keeps that same behavior in place, because there are no serious consequences for
Right.
doing that actions. Yes.
It's where it's that point where the laws of God outweigh the laws of man.
Exactly.
So if with that mentality, there's really no saying one religion is more violent than the other. They are both equally violent. They are both
Or in the same
used to
capacity.
control the masses.
Or in the same capacity right now.
No. You see. I think what Miss Becca is trying to say here is that in Nigeria, I'm trying to understand what she's trying to say here is that Christianity is not as violent as Muslims, what modern day Muslims in Nigeria are. But for the fact that Christianity has reformed itself and become, as I've laid down, the Christians have laid down their swords, but now the Muslims are the one wielding the swords. Therefore, it's no longer, it's the same as if you how will I say it? Someone used to be a criminal, but just because they've stopped, now they are giving uh, the benefit of the doubt, so that when someone is doing it now, all of a sudden, just because the previous person is not doing it anymore, then he is a good person compared
No,
to.
that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, so what are
Let,
what you
let me
saying?
give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
In Nigeria, I'm talking about things that are still happening now. First of all, if you there's a report that Amnesty International did, I think in 2019, how in the north of Nigeria, I think 70% of the prisoners in the north of Nigeria, all of north of Nigeria, especially in Kano, were children, especially girls. And when they looked at the demographic of who are these girls, they were usually girls. So this is where again I'm pointing you to Christianity differs from Islam. In Islam, you can marry a 9-year-old who has breast, who has started her period. You can marry her as your wife and you can be sexually abusing her. They don't call it that. It's legitimate. Now, many of these girls were married off like that. The north of Nigeria has the highest rate of fistula. It's a medical condition where when a child whose body is not mature enough to carry a baby is forced to do so. So you marry a 9-year-old, by the time she's 10, 11, she's already a mother. Her body cannot handle because she's not mature. And then her body starts to leak. You can Google it. Her body starts to leak fluids. After a while, she's smelling. They kick her out, sometimes with her children. She's living on the street. Now, many of those children, when they get to like 13, 14, if they are still married to the said husband, these are grown adult men, 50-year-olds, marrying little children, forcing them to have children, sexually violating them, but it's legitimate in the Sharia law that exists where these children are who have no choice. At a point when a child is pushed and abused daily, they buy rat poison, and to find a way out of their very difficult life, they poison the so-called husband. The state of where they are, arrest them, try them under the Sharia law and throw them in prison. You can Google it. So the northern Nigerian prison are filled with these children that people deem as, so a court of law in the north of Nigeria will admit that a 9-year-old can be somebody's wife. So please tell me how that is happening in modern day Christianity. It used to happen. It doesn't happen anymore. If there's a case of a rape if there's a priest in the south of Nigeria, for example, abusing a child, there are committees that have to, yes, usually these things, corruption comes in, but it is not legitimized. It is not allowed. In Lagos, as we speak, there's a lot of people who go into the Catholic priesthood who are really struggling with their sexuality and usually abusing boys. There are councils that out them. There are people on social media saying, yes, when I was 14, this Reverend Father touched me. And there are government officials obviously always looking at it because it is reported as a crime. In Islam, it is not. In 2017, somebody left the north of Nigeria and went to the south in a place called Delta State and kidnapped an 11-year-old child, took her back to the north and married her as a wife. She was 11. Her family, being obviously not North, not Muslims, did not agree that she was somebody's wife. It's like, it's our child, return it. They spent years fighting for their child to be returned. By the time she was eventually returned, she was 15. So it was now the federal state of Nigeria. Now listen to how problematic this is. Nigeria is a country, one country, right? But a region of Nigeria practices Sharia law. So when things like this happen, is now the federal state of Nigeria against a Sharia state where the Sharia usually wins. So the federal government they're fighting, like, return this child, she's not Muslim, you don't have a right to even do that. But in the north is legal, so that they've started overstepping the boundary again to express this dominance. We're leaving now the north to go and do it in the south because we're looking for dominance. They kidnapped this girl, they bring her, they marry. Her parents were fighting, and a court of law in the north of Nigeria refused to return the child because, according to their religion, that's normal. So they are not the same. They are not.
I hear you. You see, when we speak about children, and I don't know if you're a mother, but when people who find themselves to be, let's say, mothers or parents, I think your assimilation to children being essayed is one thing that hits too close to home. So therefore, your how will I say it? Your arguments are usually charged with a lot of emotions, and I can hear it in your voice. Listen, when it comes to kidnapping of people, it is not allowed in any regard in many nations, and I don't think the Sharia law does allow the kidnapping of innocents. But if it does, then I find this to be beyond reasoning. But to fast forward, when you live in a nation where you have two opposing ideologies, where one is religious doctrine and one is state doctrine, then the nation finds itself in what we call, you are in split ideologies, where one is Islamic ideology while the other one is state ideology. So then, in order to protect the citizens who find themselves, or people who allow themselves to be governed by state law, you need a force, a military, in order to protect them, to protect the law and enforce it, to be the barrier between those who find themselves to accept Sharia law and so on. But the thing is that the fact that people, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, people who impose Sharia law onto children, do they allow themselves to be judged by such Sharia law?
It's not up to them. If you're in northern Nigeria in a state where Sharia exists, it's not up to you, because some of those people, the Sharia was adopted before they were even born. So they don't get to decide. So you have a federal government, you have a state government, you have the Sharia. But in the north, if something resembles the connotation of religion, Sharia is always applied. So you cut people's hands because they steal, but your governor just stole $20 million and nobody can cut his hand, even though he's also a Muslim, and Sharia should apply to him. So the Sharia is then used to govern these processes of oppression and domination. So it's not like people have a choice. People do not have a choice where these things go. But if you are a radical and you do, there are certain things that you do, you apply once you apply to say my religion allows me, it goes straight to the Sharia court, and that's why those children are in prison.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I think that is what we find problematic not even in Nigeria, in Somalia and so on. Because I remember where they posed a law to ban child marriages in Somalia, and these grown men were crying on national television and globally just because there was a referendum to ban children from being married to grown men. I for one do not agree. And one thing that many men have to know, this uneducated men that follow this Sharia law is this, that, and I said it earlier, that why do Muslim men tend to hate their women? That your women are not second class citizens in your nation. That you have to let children be children. So if you find yourself to want to marry children whom are within your culture or your Sharia law is permissible, you have to find yourself this: what do you need that child for? If you need your child for the girl to bear your children, it has to be capable of having children. And one thing we know is that children do not have the how to call it, the might to bear children. They don't have the might, or they are not fully developed to bear children. So therefore they have to be a stronger how to call it, forces against said law. And that is why when you find a nation or a group of people who both the Christian and the Islamic State all of a sudden use the law of God, and that's why I say earlier, idiots with the stamp of God, start doing foolish things. And but just because the state of Nigeria also are Christians, allow Muslims or those people who follow Islamic law to be, because they too believe that God is able to give you such right. But if they were non-believers, I don't think they will put more force. They will gather themselves more and fight against these atrocities that they do onto children.
Why I implore you to read the Quran. Read the Quran. Do you know that? You know what the age of consent in Quran is, and it's not even about age.
There's
Is that
no
it?
there's no age of consent in many
Yeah,
societies,
it's not about
Western,
age.
yeah.
It's not about age, but there's an imam that told me in the north of Nigeria that once a girl starts her period and has breast, according to the Quran, she is mature for marriage. He told me that. It's in the Quran. That's what I'm telling you. These are things like when people want to have these conversations, you have to actually understand that they are literal things that they follow. They didn't make it up. They are not uneducated. The one of the Boko Haram, defenders in Nigeria, Sheikh Gumi, he has a PhD. He's not an illiterate, and he's quoting the Quran to you. And as long as the Quran exists in his region where the Sharia law is dominant, you are not having a solid argument to them, because even if you go to court, they open the Quran to you and that's what they read. That's the basis of their judgment.
you, you,
So you
you
cannot tell them, oh, a girl is not mature. They're like, yeah, but she has breasts and she does her period. So why, to us, according to our
I
law,
have a question. Do they have these arguments in state courts?
that's what I'm telling you.
Isn't
That
isn't it, isn't the state, the how do you call it, the age of consent in Nigeria 18 years of age?
Nigeria is that's what I'm telling you, that this is not a conversation that you can have without understanding the complexities of why it was able to happen in Sudan, Somalia, like you said, Ethiopia, all the places that they've managed to wreck, and now the current one is Nigeria. Once you understand how they were able to do it, then you can understand what I'm telling you.
Hold on,
That
hold on, hold on. Let me check something with AI. Okay, hold on for me. What is the age of consent, or in the Hadith or in the Quran?
Not an age.
The Quran and the Hadith do not specify a particular age of consent in the way modern legal systems define it. Islamic jurisprudence generally considers adulthood or maturity as a key factor, often tied to physical or mental maturity. Scholars have interpreted this differently over time and in different contexts, but there's no single explicit age set by these texts. Instead, age of consent in Muslim majority countries today tends to be determined by national laws rather than directly by scripture.
In Nigeria, is if you have your period and you have breast, you are of marriable age. That's what they call it.
Oh, I know that people listen. Men are evil, and men, when it comes to us as species, is within our nature to hurt people, and because that's is within our nature. That's why in many cases you need men to check other men. You need men to protect the vulnerable from other men, and it's when you find yourself in Nigeria in a nation with a lot of lawlessness, where people can only use this passage in the Hadith or the Quran as a legitimate way to essay children, then these are a group of essayers and use.
That's a lie. I actually take offense to that, by the way.
Why do you
We're not talking about, because we're not talking about Nigeria as an entity. We're talking about a Nigeria that a sub-region exists that is governed by Sharia law. And that's why I'm telling you, like, you have to understand the context of what you're talking. There are Muslims who are not
people who find themselves within the borders of Nigeria. So
yeah, but Nigeria is not lawless because of that. The problem is that Nigeria in the military rule before I was born allowed Sharia law, allowed the Arabs to come and say, oh yeah, we're the majority in this place. Let us adopt Islamic law. And it coexists with the Constitution of Nigeria. And so whenever something that has this bearing of, I don't know if I can call it moral, whenever such a case comes up, it goes to the Sharia court. And in legal systems, there are proceedings. And so in the Sharia court, there's no argument of, oh, this cannot apply because of moral values. Doesn't it? Once you allow it, that's what I'm saying to you. That's what I've been trying to say, that it should not be like they're fighting now in England for Sharia law to exist. That will be the worst thing you can do, because you cannot argue with a constitutional court. They allowed it to happen. So if something,
one thing I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna cut it short. The fact that in Nigeria there are men out there, and I'm saying that's as a nation in general, and there are men out there who seek to marry children and blame it under the umbrella of religion. These are evil people and need to be dealt with, and in many cases there are military conquests that needs to be done in order to make it happen. And that's what happened within Christianity. That's why you find yourself that Christianity has reformed itself, but it didn't reform itself willingly. It was something that was done through the through sweat and blood, and such interventions is necessary within Nigeria or the environments in which these men who govern themselves by Sharia law find themselves.
If I could, she just said that Miss Becca said that in England they're pushing for Sharia law. Now they did this in Canada as well years ago, maybe 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. The issue is that Sharia law and our country's constitution are incompatible. So these things, and they've come to the same conclusion in England, where the laws within Sharia law would be deemed unconstitutional in a charter challenge in legal terms, because the nation has a constitution. And if that Sharia law is not compatible with it, it doesn't happen. It's not something that can happen. So just to avoid future fear mongering verbiage of Islam, we should probably acknowledge the fact that yes, they do try to do this, but legally speaking, it's not doable. Not in England, not in Canada, not in the United States.
And I don't believe it to be doable in any European country, but the nations that are currently having those laws, those are the only places where it will be doable.
But
Yeah.
do you not think there's a possibility that this could take root? One, we need to look at how I'm going to point fingers here, how the Muslims reproduce. In Europe, you can see this. I'm not sorry to say this. There's an Arab kid everywhere around the corner. Everywhere you walk, you see an Arab kid. And when people are growing, and when a community is growing, it's becoming a majority. We know the white population in Europe is not such a huge number, and as you said earlier, the problem here is the men in general. Yeah. And also, I believe the Sharia law is a footstool for the pedophile ring. They want to be able to do it legally, but there's people also doing it illegally and just casually. People going with children. There was a poll that was run in the United Kingdom, and where men were asked, "Would you be willing to go with a child, be under the bed, or to bed with a child, if it was not you were not to be brought to book?" And they agreed to do it, and the men were in agreement to that. They didn't have a problem with going sleeping with a child. So the problem here is, yes, the laws still stand. We agree to that. They're very strong without a benefit of a doubt. But as I said earlier, you need to nip the baby before it grows. This baby is growing, and we need to nip it
Thank
before it
you.
grows.
Oh,
Thank you.
I agree with the fact that I myself am against religious expansions, regardless of whatever it may seem here. I'm against religious expansion, especially in West Africa and Africa, because you can't expand religiously without it being colonial in many aspects of West Africa. And that is what it becomes, because in West Africa, we have so many tribes that in order for you to spread your religion, you have to subdue others in order to achieve your religious goals. And that is in itself problematic enough. But when I look at this, and I'm gonna tackle this as let's say if I am a minister of Nigeria or Ghana, whatever it may be. When you look at religious text and it says one thing, and then there are other people who interpret it for it to mean what they want to mean. These are rogue individuals, and they need to be dealt with. And what is scary is that many people will argue that it's better to do away with the whole entire religion before then we know we've get rid of the problem and we will never have the problem at all in the future. you know and I also see that point, that people want to stop Islamization before it festers, because they see it as a disease, because the fact that there are men out there that will use it for their own gain, and men will use any ideology for their own gain, regardless whether it's religion or not. So it's with respect that we understand that to be, but the fact that we find as in a situation, listen, where in the part of Ghana where I live from, I'm surrounded with mainly Christians, and there's a lot of the things that the Christians do that I myself do not like, and Muslims might do that I myself do not like. But then I seek. I don't go out to honor life them. But when you have an ideology where all the, let's say, the forefathers of such ideologies are people who tend to use violence as a means to solve the problems, then the people who wish will be the followers of said religion will be violent in retrospect, if it makes sense to people who are listening.
Two things can be true at once. We can't neglect that aspect. And we can't neglect that Islam wants to dominate. And they're doing it slowly, but surely. And we don't know how it ends, really. That's the problem.
No, because
We
in Africa, the end game of Islam being spread in ways which is wrong. For example, in terms of it holding on to Sharia law, you find yourself in a situation like Somalia. That is inevitable. It is bound to happen. You know, because the fact that it has zero tolerance for other people in itself is a problem.
If I could, here in Indian country in Canada, we have it's kind of a common saying when it comes to people spreading fears about Islam or have sharing their Islamophobic ideologies. When they're doing that, we look at them and we say, "I'm not afraid of Islam. We survived the Christians. We'll survive them too." It's not one is not better than the other. They both subject themselves to the same critiques of abuse and assault and physical violence, sexual violence, colonization, genocide. They've all contributed. It's all been used as a management tool for it.
I agree with you, Scott, and it's like, and that is what is problematic with said expansion of said religion, because in many cases, both Christianity and Islam, it can never spread within the context of Africa or in the continent without it being linked to violence. Both of them will always be linked to violence in one way, shape, or the other. And then with that said, if anyone don't have anything to say about said topic, let's move on to the next one, because we've done 2 hours on almost 2 hours on that same topic. So then let's try to tackle the questions on the board whilst there's still time. And let's start with the first one. It says, is Arabization a form of decolonization or a new kind of colonization? I don't know who wanna tackle that one first. Purpose, you wanna?
Well, that's just more colonization is all that is. It's not.
You want to deepen your thoughts on why you believe it's or how?
Well, to decolonize, the act of decolonization for my people has been to, again, my people had our language, our culture, our people decimated by the Christian religions. Absolutely decimated. They've stolen our language. We've had to relearn it. They've stolen our children up until at least 1980. Threw them into assimilation schools or residential schools so that we can assimilate to Christian values. It's to decolonize yourself from those things. You can't follow their religion. You don't consume their poisons. You don't follow their belief structures. You try to readapt your original cultural groundings. Like for me, instead of going to church on Sunday, I either go fishing, I go hunting, or I go for a walk in Mother Nature with my dogs. That's my church. I spend time with bears in my backyard. I don't see the value in my decolonized mind for a God that isn't mine. And in order to do that, well, I can't. Islam makes no sense to me. Buddhism actually does make a little bit of sense to me. Christianity makes no sense to me. It's no different. Reading the Christian Bible is no different to me than reading the second version of the Lord of the Rings Two Towers. You know, like it's the same. It has the same effect. Yeah, it's a good book. I like to read it, but it's not my God, and it's not my. The hypocrisy is too thick for me to agree with, and I avoid those arguments because it's not worth discussing.
Mm.
You know,
I get it. Those of you listening, feel free to interject and like live, share and bring your opinion. And those of you who do want to join, but you have family members who might watching or you follow, you can always turn off notification. So when you do join live, you don't want people to know you are in that room. You can always turn off that notification on the TikTok so that you know. What about you, Miss Becca?
Yeah, I think I solely believe that it is a form of recolonization of Africa for various reasons, for very obvious and various reasons. I don't see it as a religion. And since we're talking about Islam, I want to focus on just Islam. I see it as a tool of regional domination. And yeah, there are evidences that exist across sub-Saharan Africa that shows that these are not just my opinion but facts. So if there are political connotations, there are people with special interests that already call Nigeria a Muslim country, even though we are not, and you cannot tell me otherwise. So for me, the mean justifies the end. The means of violence of you have to accept it by force. It's either you accept it or you're not going to live. Just that's what colonialism is. Even though I'm not Arab, I have no interest of being Arab. I don't care. But if colonization meant you came from your land to tell me how to live and how I must become to be like you, then yeah, in the African context and especially for Nigeria, it is a tool of recolonization of Africa. Yeah.
Purpose, you wanna share your.
Yeah, I give my opinion on Mauritania, yeah, and what they're doing there. The Arab-looking Mauritanians want to have a country of their own and want to push out the black Muslims. So they want it to be, they look like Egyptians and Arabs, and they want to do the same thing. So you see, they go to particular countries, they're going to Africa, and they want to make their people brown, like they look, and push the black people down, out and out. This is the thing I'll always say and stick by. Black people need to wake up. We need to wake up. And it's really sad and tragic to experience and see.
I, for one, do agree with everyone on the board when in terms of Arabization being a new form of colonization because of what we've seen on the continent of Africa. And I think it's uniquely when it comes to the continent of Africa that we find it being this problematic because there's always people who stand against it because they see that the amount of violence in which people who follow Abrahamic religion impose upon them is too much that it disrupts their dailyhood and being in terms of language where you have to learn a new language. Okay, it's English for the Christians not to be able to read the Bible. I remember that myself, how we were forced to go to school and learn English. We were beaten if you couldn't pronounce the word correctly. And for those who had to learn Arabic, they face the same justice. And that's one. Names were erased. You find people being named Matthew, Luke, John, and so where indigenous African names wiped out, even though it's not a must. But for some reason, it is viewed more authentic to have names that are names of venerations, as they say it, for those who follow those religions. But then it always erases the indigenous names and indigenous culture. And if that happens for so long, all of a sudden there's nothing tying the people who then, how do you call it, habits the land to the land anymore, because they have nothing. Their language has been altered, their name has been altered, their customs and their systems has been altered. They don't no longer know how to live of the environment in which they find themselves, and it becomes problematic. But if it was done otherwise, other ways, then it might work. I, for one, I know that there are people in this world that do find meaning in religion and find salvation in it. Okay, and for those who do it and which do it well, it works for them. But as a unifying clarion call for the whole of Africa, it's impossible, and it's gonna be a new form of colonization. So, with that said, let's move on to number two. Or else anyone want to say something? They want to eradicate us
Yeah.
everywhere. Yeah, I do agree that when it comes to expansion of Islam within West Africa, for example, it comes with the intent to eradicate what is now, other tribes and other customs. That is without a doubt. And it's uniquely West African, that these things do happen. And if it has happened, then it has happened other places way before. But when it comes to our side of the globe, it is something that is fresh within our living memories.
Yeah, but I was going to say that also we Africans are a problem because we ourselves, most of us, are colonized mentally, where we prefer these things. We prefer to have these names, and we're ashamed of our own culture. And that's why we are now, the context of divide and conquer has been perfected in Africa. You divide them so that they are different fractures, and then you make them always trying to be Western. Like, what is wrong with being African? What's wrong with having your own name? Like, what is wrong with your name? Why do you want to sound like you're European, or you're this and you're that? Because they give us this inferiority complex, and we must always seek to attain the Western identity. And that's why it's very easy. So if you go to some African countries, there will be Africans that will prefer a foreigner. They will say, "Oh, you're a white man. Oh, come and join, come and skip the queue and go to the front. We give you special treatment." Meanwhile, in your country, that's not how you treat us. So if we already treat ourselves this way, we have given them a framework to perfect their craft of dividing us and eradicating. And that's what they're doing across Africa. It's not just in West Africa. Mind you, it's across many. The only African region that is sort of not yet, I say yet because they will get there, facing this problem is the South. In the North, they already own it, they don't need to. But in the East and West, this is a huge problem.
Or in South Africa, when you speak about the white people that have taken over, it's not the Afrikaners, but the white people from Europe and America that are living there now. They just live there. The people in Cape Town have been pushed out. The locals have been pushed out. The housing is a disaster. The rents is up to the roof. If you take 2,000 euros and bring it to South Africa, that's a lot of money. And when someone is paying rent of 1,000 euros and a local Cape Townian cannot afford this. So it's not only about the Arabs, really. It's about the white people repeating the same book as well. We can't neglect this bit.
Yeah.
And even the white people in South Africa have been pushed out.
But we allow it. For example, we glorify anything that is foreign and white is just perfect. If you've traveled in East Africa, to me it's actually disgusting the way they treat white people, the way the locals. There was even a time I was in Accra, I was very upset. I was like, am I invisible? I was in the bank and the lady was trying to skip me to attend to a white man that was behind like everybody. I was like, nope, me, I'm Nigerian. We don't take that rubbish. Everybody join the queue. When it's your turn, they will serve you. As long as we are like this, they've conditioned us to be like this. And that's also why sometimes we're against each other, because the white man is our God. The white man and the Arabs are our God. One used to use violence in Christianity, they don't anymore. The other one is like, yeah, since they're stupid, let's just go and take over their place. And that's what's happening. But yeah, sorry to divert the conversation.
No problem. I mean, you're allowed to, because speaking personally, I had a friend who only catered to white people. He moved to New York, and he posts photos of him only with white friends. And I said, "What? Didn't you have other friends?" And the excuse was like, "I just find myself in these circles." You don't find yourself in these circles. You put yourself in these circles.
And even if you put yourself in, even sometimes like we cannot. We didn't design our lives the way our lives. I'll give you an example. I've traveled quite a bit in Africa, especially in West and East. In Kenya and in Tanzania, I was actually disgusted by the way white people are treated. Like, it offended me to the point that I was staying in this resort in Zanzibar. And the first day, like, it's a nice place. We're staying at the beach. Everybody comes out to breakfast, but I don't eat breakfast. But on holiday, I made an exception because I was, let me go and see what they have. So because this lady, she didn't see me often, like I don't go for breakfast. And because usually when I wake up, I run to the beach side to go and reserve a seat. I prefer to stay there and read, and I can have lunch. So I didn't go for breakfast for like the first few days. So she didn't know I was a guest. One day I'm by the pool, and this European woman had the audacity to walk up to me and said, "Oh, she wanted to hand over her child to me because I look like I work in the creche." I looked at her, I was like, "What gave you that impression? Or you think you're the only ones that can come? I'm African." But then when I looked at the resort, the fact that the only black people that they saw were people serving them. So for me, there was no other reason why I'm there if I'm not serving her, you know. But the thing is, the Tanzanians and the Kenyans, they glorify and allow. I was so upset with her. I went to report her, and the guy was she had to be served a warning. The next day she saw me. She was trying to make a complaint to me at the breakfast place. What I'm trying to say is that we Africans, we have an inferiority complex. And when people come and see that, sometimes you cannot, even if you're in white spaces. I live in Germany, I'm in white spaces, but I would never allow anyone treat me like, and I'm not an exception. The way you would treat the average African, treat me that way. Don't say, oh, you are the special one. Some of us Africans, we pander to these things. When a white person says, you are not like the other Africans, we think that means that's an insult to you as an African. You know, so for us, until you, like you said, purpose, we are not ready to not be eradicated. It's our fault mostly that what is happening in Africa is happening. I'll leave it there for now.
How did they treat you in Germany? Because when I went there, it might have just been the fact that my German was brutal, and my skin is very dark at that time, not black dark, but like red. And I was called a Scheisen Englishman. I was called a bunch of other German words that I didn't really understand until later, but they were derogatory. I did not like how I was treated. I can't imagine how a black person would be treated there.
Absolutely.
Was that the case for you?
I mean, I would say that I have two different advantages, which I don't like to see or apply to myself as an advantage. And because I grew up in England, I grew up in the Western world. I went back to Africa when I was 21. I've been working there. I'm I'm an old woman now. Let me say it like that without saying my age. I'm in my 30s. So
You're not that
I've
old.
always
I'm 48. So
oh, okay. I've always been a contradiction in white spaces, but I've always existed in white spaces. But what I don't allow is that I'm special. I'm not special. I'm an African. To the point that there was a time I taught at the university. the biggest university in Berlin, Humboldt University, and it was during COVID. And I remember my students like put on their cameras, everybody, and they were so shocked. And there was this, they were shocked that I was, to the point that one of my students was like, "Oh, are you the one, or are we waiting for somebody else?" Like, nope, it's me. And it wasn't until like later in the semester she was explaining to me that to her from Ukraine, she didn't think that as an African I could teach, at the university where I was. I was like, wow, it was very shocking to me. I was like, the world is bigger than what you know, because I am the person who goes to conferences and I'm giving talks, and I always have to start with, yes, I'm African, but I didn't come here on a boat. Because the narrative is that all of us are like this, but still, I don't want to be treated specially. And to be honest with you, when you're married to a white man, you experience Germany differently, but not so different. But the mistake that I would make as an African who's very pro-African would be to allow that exception to myself, because it doesn't allow me to see that this is a facade and this is not how Africans are treated. So yeah, I'll leave it there for now.
Yeah, what my trip was fraught with just bigotry, really, towards me for being English, me for not being white enough. I really stuck out. I really felt out of place. My eyes were opened up to a lot of things within Germany and the Netherlands that I did not like. The last person in my family that was there killing Germans on the Rhine back in 1940s. So just it felt out of place. I did not like Germany. I just didn't like it. Salzburgen was good. The schnitzel was okay. I don't drink, so I never really got into the beer, but I felt out of place. I felt unwelcomed. Yeah.
I fear having children with German. I fear having mixed German child. That's
Well, I think about Germany, the two things maybe you could work with: standing your authority and who you are. Like Ms. Becker says here, she's a lecturer, I believe, from what I understood. And also Berlin is a very different energy, it's different people, different kinds of people. Maybe the racism may be flat. You might not fully experience it, but you will definitely experience it one way or the other. But one, standing in your authority. And when you speak German, you have a higher advantage, They might see past your skin color when you speak German, and they might treat you a bit differently, but we can't ignore that. Those bits come in. And also, one thing I observed in Germany is mostly you will experience more racism from non-Germans, non-white Germans, than from Germans
Facts.
themselves. So yeah, that's what I tell
Mine
you.
is from the Arabs. Mine
Oh
is
my
the
God.
Arabs. Like,
well, that
it's
is
it's
something that
a
is.
terrible experience.
But let's tackle more questions on the board, and it was a nice deviation just to.
Sorry,
No, it
sorry
was
to
nice.
deviate.
When you're having these topics, you need to deviate from the hard talks, just to refresh the mind, so you can get back in a little bit harder. So the second question says: is adopting a language also adopting a worldview?
Language is inseparable from our identity, to be honest. And I think one of the things that sometimes I look at as a disadvantage to most of us in Africa, most of our countries in Africa, is the lack of a unison identity which language creates. So, for example, who is a Ghanaian when we are tribal? Who is a Nigerian when we speak over 300 languages? And that's why, in my own personal, like, whenever people, when I talk about the future of Nigeria, up to the point that I'm passed on and the next generation or whatever, I don't see a country that will be one country. I don't see it, because we don't have a unison identity. There's no such thing as a Nigerian. Doesn't exist. Maybe it exists outside of Nigeria because then we're looking for belonging with each other, but in Nigeria it doesn't exist. And my there was a time I asked like a historian, and one of the things he said was because we don't have a national identity in language. You know who a German is. A German speaks German, but who is a Ghanaian? And I think that's why I think language is very significant to culture and also to a cultural identity of who a people are. And as long as we don't have that, we don't have a unison. And that's why we are very easy to divide and conquer in Africa. You just come and you tell the Igbo people, yeah, we prefer you. Let's give you arms to fight the other. You can do that because there's no commonality of identity that is bounded by language. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
I, for one, do agree with you, but I think the problem in which we face as a group of people is beyond language. Even though language plays a big part, I think that the biggest problem that we have as post colonial people is respect. You know, when an African has to take orders from another African, all of a sudden, then we start pointing our differences. But when that same African can benefit you one way, shape, or form, all of a sudden those differences are non-existent. So, give you an example: if an Igbo man is rich and is helping the Fulani person, of course, yeah, you know. But if that same person didn't have money, but then he's sharing a message, all of a sudden it's frowned upon. And I think that is the problem in which we face. And always, we did someone say something? Oh, no. And always, I think we find ourselves in situations where we tend to push, how do you call it, agendas that are always in many times this colonial and can be disjusted. How can I say it? It tends to serve one call it nation or what people say tribe more than the other, and I think that's what and happens that we tend to always think of it having a colonial style of ruling, that we have to have one unified language, one unified ruler, and so on. And it won't work in the nations where we have so much diversity. But the matter of the fact is, if we are all able to respect each other and come together with our our call it the things that we have to offer our countries. Let's say we have gold in the nations in the south of Nigeria. Okay, we have diamond. You can trade and so on. That we maintain the pre-colonial systems. I think we'll be able to achieve it. But if we are going to put in place the colonial system, then we will not be able to achieve uh, unity as Africans or post-colonial people. Yeah, purpose or Scott, you wanna?
Yeah, but it's because we have, for the longest time, what does development look like for Africa? What does modernization look like for Africa? Today, walking barefoot is now a trendy thing in America, in Europe, in America, everywhere. White people are running around barefoot. Oh, it's healthy. It's this and that. Oh, doing uh, uh, now mud huts are now a trendy thing. Suddenly, but they were a weird thing because these mud huts are good for winter. They're good for the summer. They're good for the winter. And they're good for the summer. How that technology is made, nobody knows. But I respect our forefathers that created those things. So if we look up to Europe and America for development and what it should look like, we should have a subway, we should have posh streets. That's where we're losing the plot because we're looking at an inspiration picture. We don't appreciate our own things. What does it look like to be African, going in the morning to get fresh water from a well, which is safe, it's not poisoned? Why are they poisoning our wells?
And it speaks to the fact that post-colonial people, and I think the reason why people, Africans were colonized in such regard is because we are susceptible to other people's opinion of us. we are not selfish and self-centered in the same regard. We value what people think of us. Therefore, we always structure our society um, in ways where people will portray us as good, and as civilized, or as Christians, or as Muslims. And that's what is problematic, that we are not unapologetic Africans or non-apologetic Africans. And I think that's what many Africans need to be. And it starts with our families, that we have to distance ourselves from these. I, for one, for example, within my family, everyone knows me as a person that, regardless of age, if you deserve respect, I will give you respect. If you don't, I will give you respect. And that's what it needs to be. Just because we live in a society where, just because an idiot is doing things that are bad, but just because he's an elder, we have to respect him and allow him to do things that he's doing just because of the age. And I, for one, do not agree with that. I don't know if the same in Nigeria, Ms. Baker.
Yeah, I think I don't agree with that either. But as I said, Africans are very docile people, and that's why we are still practicing the religions of our oppressors, and we demonize our own cultural practices, our ancestral practices. You see Africans that'll be saying, it's juju, it's demonic, it's this. Like, how is your own way of reaching a supreme being, which your forefathers practiced? How is that demonic because somebody came and told you otherwise? And that we're docile people, especially our men, are not willing to be confrontational. And for example, as Purpose was saying, in Germany, the black person, you will never escape being treated badly. But people must have a level of respect for you that you will stand up for yourself. I wouldn't even call it respect, I'll call it fear. They must say, no, this one we cannot just, she will talk back. Otherwise, they will treat you anyhow because they are used to us being docile. They'll do anything to you, just walk away. I don't want problem. No, people know what they're doing. And I feel like for us in Africa, first of all, we need to wake up, like Purpose was saying. All black Africans need to wake up and see themselves as one entity. One, not I'm Ghanaian, I'm from Ivory Coast. One entity. Like, we have to have a common interest of pan-Africanism. Like, if I had any kind of power in government, that's what I'll push for in every country. Pan-Africanism, we are the same people. Together we stand. It's because we are divided. That's why we are fallen on the ground. We are poor, even though we are the richest continent on earth. We have to teach that. And I have given up on my generation. The generation I have hope for are the children that are being born now, the ones that are yet to be born. Teach them from that age that somebody from Ghana is your brother, is your sister. That's how it used to be. That's the only way we can come out of the shit that we're in. So that if anybody brings anything that is outside of the unity, even if it's for my religion, I must be willing to die first for my identity as an African before I can defend any religion that was brought to me elsewhere. I think until Africans, and that's why, like, even in the Nigerian context, I'm not Yoruba, but I love the Yoruba culture for that. I was born in Lagos, which is part of the Yoruba land. The Yoruba people are the most, in my opinion, of Nigeria, united people. The Hausas are united based on religion. The Yorubas are united based on their identity as Yoruba people. And that's why you would see in the Yoruba land, you don't have people that are necessarily extremely Christian or Muslims. Yoruba people are so liberal that you will see a Yoruba person, they can marry 5 times. They can marry you see women, they've been divorced 5 times, they keep marrying because it's their culture. And even though they are Christians and Christianity frowns upon divorce, they still do it because to them, they are like, it's our culture for people not to be alone. So no matter the religion a Yoruba person practices, their culture is dominant to that religion. So if they have to pick a side, like that Imam said to me in Lagos, he said to me, like, yeah, I'm from a multi-religious household. My father was a Muslim, my mother is a Christian. I go in Lagos when I was growing up, we were taught both. I didn't understand Islam until I became an adult and I went to north of Nigeria. That I was like, oh, it's different. It's not the same, you know? So the point is that coming together of us as if I see an African, as I am like this in Germany, I can never see an African being harassed in public and I'll pass. And I'm a woman. But I have been on the train where this woman came in, there was an empty seat. She sat down, and this Arab guy, she sat in the middle of, there was a seat in the middle. So she comes in and she sits there, and they pushed her, men pushed her on the ground, and everybody was watching. And I look on the other side, there was one brother there. Because me, I went to them. First of all, I helped her stand up, and then I was screaming at the men. And there was a man opposite me who was an African. I had to go, like, where are you from? Are you not a man? He told me he's from Cameroon. I said, but you just saw how they pushed that lady. She was from Ghana. That's your sister. You should not pass that. There's no reason why. And they know that we are docile people and we've been like this over generations. So we have to come to the point where if you're an African, another African is your brother or your sister. And it's that unity that is going to make us go back to the way that we used to be. And unfortunately, I don't believe it to be in my lifetime, but I'm willing to try. I'll stop it here for now.
Well said, well said. And many wise words have been spoken in this second segment. But moving on, the third question is Arabization voluntarily adoption or historical pressure? Or should I go first? Okay. I, for one, think that the fact of the, the term Arabization itself speaks volume to the fact that it is a problem. That even many Arabs are so, how will I say, cocky to the extent that when they see people who do not look Arab, they are like, ah, I see you follow the footsteps of my grandfathers or the religion of my grandfathers, like you are following my religion. You know, they see that, let's say, Islam is uniquely Arab. So if that narrative should spread, then all of a sudden, what business do I have as an African following an Arabic religion then? You know, but I, for one, says that it is being influenced by Arabic culture has historical pressure to it. The fact that in order for you to understand the concept and everything that goes with Islam, you have to understand the Arabic language, which is Arabic. Unless the books are translated in everything, but everything is done, the rituals and everything is done in Arabic, so it comes with Arabic. But when Arabic becomes the lingua franca for a nation, you know, be it Mali, where you hear that in schools, you hear that in mosques, and so on, then you intend decolonize or colonize your own language. You know, I remember there was a imam in Burkina Faso who believed that if God was actually what people say or describe him to be in the Quran, then he shouldn't have a problem of me worshiping him in my language, in my Ubuntu language, in my Yoruba language, you know, in my Hausa language, you know, in my Zulu language, in my Xhosa, you know. So then he was arrested multiple times. So then, for me, I think it's with historical pressure that he is being arrested because people want him to do things in Arabic. But when we find ourselves in Africa, which I think is very dangerous, no sooner you start arresting people because they are preaching in a native tongue, then all of a sudden you are pushing a colonial ideology that Arabic, you are making it evident that Arabic is the only accepted language to speak or to preach in, not your native language. And with that said, it becomes a problem. And if it happens unchecked, then we'll have a situation like Somalia and the northern parts of Nigeria and in Mali You know, I'm gonna leave it to the next person.
Uh, if I could just ask a question,
Sure.
I'm just not sure as to like because we're talking about Arabization. So that's could you define that for me, like the term itself?
It is the term in which the Arabic culture, social norm, is being pushed onto people. It's like Westernization, where Western norms are pushed rather than Arabic norms and social norms.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
it's more about ideals than it is population.
yeah,
Okay, because I was looking at the word and going, well, is this about the spread of the Arab culture, Arab ideologies, or is this
yeah.
about the spread of Arab people? Because
So
if you're talking about the people, then because there's Christians and Islamic Arabs, um, with the war torn kind of the war torn state of Africa and with the refugee status of either Christians or Islam, the people get distributed to either Islamic countries, which is not, from my understanding, is not really. It doesn't really happen as much as it does with Christian Arabs coming to Christian countries or what's deemed as a Christian country. So that was my confusion. Sorry, I was just trying to make a clarifying point there. It's about ideology, not people.
yeah, it's about
Okay.
ideology, and in many cases we see that to be one thing that is spread. You know, the way Arab dressed in many cases is seen more of a formal way of dressing, as for a Muslim than,
Right.
let's say. So for example, if you should be native people should be, let's say, Muslims, and you tend to use animal skin to dress, people will say, no, you have to use cotton fabric, for example, you know, and because that is seen more,
Yeah.
even
No,
though,
I
yeah,
prefer wearing wolf.
yeah, even though the wolf skin is as modest as the fabric is, but the concept of a fabric is pushed more, and that's what we see to be a problem in many West African nation, or Africa in general, that it distorts the society.
Because if we're talking about the people, the when you bring in a Christian Arab from Palestine to the United States, they have an easier time adapting to the cultural norms of that country because the cultural norms of that country are in most forms thought of as a Christian valued country, a country that carries Christian values. Whereas if you bring in an Islamic Arab from whatever country as a refugee, they have a harder time adjusting and adapting to that culture because of the difference in religion. If we're talking about the Sharia law, like again, this has been attempted in other countries, successful in more Islamic countries than in countries who value freedom, personal freedoms or individual freedoms. They have kind of a harder time adjusting because Sharia law won't can't coexist with our constitution, our country's constitution. And the same with England and mostly the United States, and most of it stems from the freedom of religion, of which is enshrined in our state's constitution. So because of that, Sharia law can never exist. Okay, so these things People fearmonger about it and what have you, but for the most part, there's no adaptation process in that, because the two cannot coexist. One is a religion, one is a state value or a national value.
Yeah, I understand, and I've said multiple times that religion and state cannot mix, and the moment where you try to mix religion into governing a country, then at least what we classify as modern country, then you start to have a problem, because you can't have both, because the necessities to structure a society usually a modern society usually goes against the religion in which
Yeah.
you want to structure it around. So then
No one wants to be ruled by ISIS. And in the same context, on the opposite side of the spectrum, no one wants to be ruled by the Vatican.
for example, let me give you one example. If Ghana should adopt the religion of Islam, for example, or Sharia law, the nation will collapse in a heartbeat, because the nation is not structured around such laws. For example, Ghana is predominantly ruled, or the economy is driven by women. So you find yourself there's women that do mostly travel outside of the country to import goods. If you have a ideology that restricts movement in such regard, that the men have to do it, so you have to take men from places and put them in places where they either have zero knowledge of how to operate in such how do you call it environment, and also do not know where to start. So then you find yourself, men will just go out. Let's say I'm going to Burkina Faso to purchase tomatoes and bring it. The men don't do those things. Men do other kinds of work. Sort of you're putting strain on a nation that has never, or don't have the backbone to survive that strain. So then it will collapse. So with that said, so that's why I would say, if you're going to push dialogue, you have to be careful, because Ghana will collapse in a heartbeat, because we don't have the structure to handle it in that sense, because women are equally valued as men.
Yeah.
In terms of
That in the United States today, we're seeing where evangelical Christians are basically have their claws deep in government actions.
Yeah, I think
And
you
it's
wanted to say something. But
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I was going to say that there's an African proverb that says, "They that don't study history will repeat it," on this context of Sharia law. So I think it's worthy to look at how a country like Nigeria allowed a sub-region to even bring this into context in the first place. And it goes back to what Purpose was saying earlier. You have to remove sentiment of political correctness and study how Islam spreads. And then you use that to understand how these representations always come up in the first place. And currently, what's happening in the US shows us that it can happen. If somebody had told any of us here 5, 10 years ago when Obama was president that they will repeal something rights, the civil rights thing about voting in the US, I'm not sure what it's called, none of us would have believed it. Do you know why? We would say, yeah, if you look at America is progressive, America is functioning as a democracy, women are in this, and women are running the district, and women are running things in the country, is never going to happen. But usually, how it happens is the population expansion, then radicalization. So once it's not going to start as Ghana wants Sharia law, it's going to start as you're going to have a sub-region of majority Muslims who now say, many of them will not even know what they are signing up for. They will tell them, oh, now we've been peaceful for the last 30 years, we've coexisted with everybody else in Ghana, And now, because this region in Accra or in Uwa, for example, is majority Muslims, we want Muslim representation. That's how it starts. And that's why I'm saying, like, when we're having these conversations, let's look at Nigeria, let's look at the US, and let's look at how the US has gone back to something that was repealed for the benefit of democracy. It can easily happen. The mistake we always make as humans is to think that it cannot happen. But when we study history and look at how these things always come back, we will know that there's no, even Canada is not exempt from it, you know. So yeah, I'll leave it there for now. Does Nigeria have a national charter? Nigeria has a national charter. Nigeria has a national constitution, which everything should abide by, and that's why when Victor, you said religion and state cannot mix, but they also cannot. I'll add that they cannot coexist. You shouldn't have a sub-region. So you shouldn't have a group of states in the US, for example, that are expanding and this ideology is spreading, and then you allow them to then have a law that governs them. They can practice religion, but religion should never become you should not, what do you call that court in Nigeria? You should not have a customary court that is religious based, because that's how it starts. You're going to have a customary court that say, yeah, we want our own affairs to be tried by that because this is our culture. After a while, they're going to want state power. Once they have state power, they're going to have state allies. They're going to have more than one state that says, we are majority Muslims. And then they will make people vote because, again, in a democracy like the US, people have a right to vote. So you're going to have people who come out to say, we are Muslims, we want to be governed by this. Once you have that, the central authority, which is the constitution, has started to lose power because there will be things that you cannot mediate within both. There will be the age of consent, which is 18. You are not an adult in Nigeria until you're 25, by the way. But in the North, it doesn't apply because the North has or these states, they have a customary court. They have state courts that mans over their affairs, that somehow, in theory, even though you say the federal government is in charge, really it is not in charge, especially on local
I want
affairs.
to ask something. Isn't the fact that in many reports that let's say the Boko Haram and those nations are being funded and in many regard kept in place by the Republic of Nigeria or the government of Nigeria?
That's not true. The thing is, what I'm just trying to say is this: we should study history so that we don't repeat the past, and we should look at how it's evolved in other countries. If you have a state, if you have a group of people that have agreed, because that's what Nigeria and most African countries, we are not the same people, we are different, but then we were forced to be a country and we've agreed to be governed by a central thing, which is the federal constitution of a country. There should never be a sub constitution, because that's what Sharia law is, a sub constitution. Because then, when the Nigerian constitution wants to start contesting, there's going to be the argument of, but these people agreed to be governed by this. Why remove yourself? So that's what usually happens. If the constitution comes into play or in conflict with the Sharia, the argument that they make at the federal high court is going to be, but they agreed that they want to be governed. And if we are a democracy, we have to allow it, you know.
No, we don't. No, that's not correct.
Well,
In Nigeria, I have a question about the Nigerian constitution. Is there a freedom of religion that is
Yes.
enshrined within that constitution?
absolute. Nigeria is constitutionally, what do you call it? There's a name. We are not a religious state. What do you call it? There's a name for it. We're a neutral state. It means you can be an atheist, you can be a traditional worshiper, an idol worshiper. You can choose not to believe. So we're not a religious, we're neither a Christian nor a Muslim state,
So,
and it's in our constitution.
within your constitution, then Sharia law, in its nature, when compared to your constitution, they are incompatible.
Yes, I
Now, this,
agree.
again, I explained this already because England did this, Canada did this, when the Muslims tried to pass some form of Sharia law or make a law stating that they only need to follow Sharia law. It was voted down
But
in a charter challenge at the Supreme Court levels
but
because Sharia law is incompatible with both criminal code in Canada and our constitution.
but one thing that I find is funny is that, and it speaks to what you said, Scott, is the fact that how can a group of Muslims who then migrate to a foreign land feel the need to impose, let's say, laws in that nation? And I think it's, for me, it's colonial, because I don't think it's even permissible to be a guest in a nation's, then all of a sudden be imposing new laws as you please, you know. And those people should be deported. Even
This is Canada. This is how it was. We
even for even how do you call it?
That's exactly what the settlers did when they came here. We had laws. We had societies and civilizations here previous to their coming here. What they did was they invaded, they occupied, they installed their own systems, their own laws, their own legislations, and enforced them.
But usually it doesn't start out that way. That's what I'm trying to
No,
say.
I understand. Listen, when it came to, even when it comes to the spread of Islam in many places of Africa, even though it was done by trade, you find many reports that Muslims prefer to trade with other Muslims. You see?
Yep.
So that alone in itself is a secret way of converting people. Like, you don't have to do it, but there's more money to make if you're a Muslim. Something like that. So
You know who else likes to do that?
white people.
The Jewish people,
Yes.
right? There's common ground. We've just solved 3,000 years of conflict right there. There's common ground. We finally found it.
Yeah.
Do both religions view themselves as better than the other, right? Yeah, no, we're finding more common ground.
Yeah. Have the same standing foundation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's crazy how it's used. For us who have a somewhat decolonized mind, it's easy for us to see. But on that side of things, it's impossible for them to see. They can't see past the bridge of their own nose.
If you want to colonize a people, introduce religion.
Yeah.
And once you do, make them feel like they have to fight. I mean, as an African person, I really cannot understand. I cannot understand Africans who are Christians and Muslims and they are sold out to it, because it almost looks like you have to give up yourself. Because the idea, like, I was having a conversation with my cousin yesterday, and I was like, the idea that a Jesus Christ from Nazareth or Palestine or wherever the guy was from came to save me, and the Bible says that I am always going to be second class, I'm never, because I'm not Jewish, I was bought by the blood of Jesus. I was like, I find that offensive. Like, how do we even allow this to happen? That somebody came and told me that, yes, I'm not the preferred one because I'm not Jewish. If I'm not Jewish, I'm not the chosen one. But the blood of somebody bought me into this fold that is not like me. I find it so crazy that we Africans, we actually bought this idea and we're perpetuating, and that's why, because our minds we're so sold out to these things, we're willing to defend it with our lives, and that's what they know. And that's why the easiest thing to get an African is through religion, through the blood of Jesus, through Muhammad. That's the easiest way to catch them.
That level of cognitive dissonance, though, is not just It's not just for people, religious people. It's for political people as well. When you have this mindset that you are either left or you are right or you are Muslim or you are, it's all part of the division game that colonization taught us, right? The decolonization of the mind is to acknowledge these things and try to remove yourself from it.
It's a it's I do agree. I do agree with what she said and you said, Scott. But in that regard, let's move on to the last one. I think since she is warmed up, she wanna go. Can Islam be separate from Arabic cultural influence or Arab cultural influence?
Yeah, I can't speak to these things. I don't know enough Arabs. I'm kind of sheltered out here in the northern bush of Canada. But I the ones that I have met, both Christian and Muslim, I don't know what the cultural difference would be. They're I'm sure there's a part of that cultural difference is going to be national, depending on what whereabouts in the Muslim world you come from, or within the Christian cultures that exist within it and around it. I think it's a more geographically based. I'm sure the Muslims of Palestine are not the same as the Muslims of, say, Iran.
No, the Palestinians themselves weren't originally Arabs. It's through conquest
Yeah.
and migration.
Or even the Christians of Palestine or the Christians of Iran. Is there a cultural difference?
Yeah.
Is there a national difference? I don't.
I think they are more
That's
similar.
that's the part I don't understand or not familiar enough with.
People who are, how do you call it, organically Arab are those who find themselves in what we have as Saudi Arabia, Arabian Peninsula, and the Emirates. Those are the ones who are fundamentally Arabs. Everyone else are either people who are became Arabs in terms of assimilation or were born through intermarriages and so on.
Okay, let's put it this way then. Are Muslim Ghana? Okay, we'll talk about Ghana. There are Muslims in Ghana, yes.
Yeah, they are.
There are Christians in Ghana, yes. Are there cultural differences between them
Yes.
beyond the religion?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
There are cultural differences.
I would have thought they're just Ghanaian and
Ghana in itself consists of many nations, as one would put it, as as tribes. So even though you find yourself in the southern part of Ghana, you will find people with different customs in which they were their own nation with their own customs, but they interacted with each other and helped each other to reach a common goal. You will find that that the languages, some of them will have dialects of the same general language and so on. So yeah.
yeah. That's good. So then, yeah. Well, it makes things. It's hard when we're talking about these things because we're talking in generalizations, and when you talk in generalizations, we do have a tendency to reach over into the realm of bigotry a little bit. So it's
I
good
understand
to.
what you're saying, but it's like when as one commentator put it, the term Arabization is as old as Egypt itself. It's it is that old. The intent started even then, to spread the Arabic influence beyond the Arabian Peninsula. So that as so that was the intent. But for other people who have been both colonized by the Brits and the Arabic influence, we are in a turmoil where there's an internal conflict, and you find yourself for example, in Nigeria, where, for example, the reason why people like those tea groups are pushing to, let's say, spread Islam is because they view Christianity as a colonial religion. So therefore, it is their duty to spread Islam because it's an alternative to the Western colonizers. So to them, being Islam is better than following a colonizer's religion. And that's and do correct me if I'm wrong.
It's kind of how the Jehovah Witnesses think here.
Yeah, the Jehovah's Witnesses are everywhere. It's like
No, that's
Yeah,
not
that's
why
gonna be.
they are.
that is the idea.
No, that's not the idea of the spread of Islam. It's not because they see it as Christianity is a colonial religion, because after all, Arab is also not indigenous to Africa. They see it more as they have adopted these lies that they've told themselves in the Quran, that the universe, the earth belongs to Allah, and the whole prophecy of the end times, similarly to what is in the Bible, is that God would come, or there'll be a new earth, and I'm not really sure of how that is explained in Islam, when the world has been conquered for Allah. So the idea of invasion, of the forceful spread of Islam, is to attain this identity where the whole world becomes under one umbrella for Allah, so that there's a reward. And that's why the people who do these things by any means necessary, I'll give you an example. In the north of Nigeria, like the radical group, my friend was telling me, he's an ex-Muslim now. He was telling me, when I worked in the north, I always saw people with white cloth, like men especially. They go out in the morning with this white, all of them, they have white cloth that they have with them. And so one time I was asking her, like, what is that for? He said that to whether Sunni or the other form of Muslim, the belief of defending Allah and the Islamic religion and spreading it is so ingrained that they leave their houses every day with a white cloth, so that in case there's a need to fight, including giving up your life for that prophecy to come to pass, you are willing to do it. So you go around life, you leave your house every day with a white cloth, so that when you die, so if you go out and there was a fight and you had to defend Allah and you died in the process, you have a cloth that they will use to wrap you. That's how intense this is. And so I asked him, as an ex-Muslim, like, what is the rationale for this? He said that he was like, only an ex-Muslim can tell you about Islam. A Muslim and a non-Muslim has no idea what Islam is. And it was like, it is a religion for which you must be willing to die for that which you believe in. And you must be willing to kill another to fulfill that prophecy. And so once you understand that, you understand how the spread of Islam has a lot to do with population expansion. It's a critical tool, is why they marry, multiple wives, breed to spread the context, so that you can dominate. That's the whole idea, dominate by any means necessary. Yeah, so I think in terms of whether or not, they are separate, it's the same. You can't separate the Arab culture. I'm aware that there are Arabs who are not Muslims, but historically, when you read, those people did not refer to themselves as Arabs. Like the Arabs, the Christians in Palestine, they didn't refer to themselves. I can't remember what they are called, but they were not. It was an imposed identity because of infiltration. If we all have to be Arabs, then you were a Christian. Just like the northern Nigerians who are Christians, they didn't decide to be northern Nigerians who were Christians. They were just northern Nigerians. They were not Muslims. They were not Arab. Many of them were practicing their local religion. Some of them were Christians, especially Catholics by colonization. But there was no such thing as a Christian northern Nigerian. They were just northerners. It was when the Muslims came that the identity emerged. So I'm not sure that you can separate it. And currently, as we speak, in the north of Nigeria, you have a group of people that call themselves, these are Nigerians, by the way, they call themselves the Shoa Arabs. These same people are also in Somalia, in Ethiopia, in Sudan. So they formed this identity where you are black or you are mixed because they started mixing a lot, like the North Africans, and they call themselves Showa Arabs in Nigeria. There was one of them I was talking to her, and she was like, I said something to her, and she was like, oh no, Hawa said to me, I'm not Hausa, I'm a Showa Arab. I was like, wow, but you're in Nigeria, so you cannot be Arab. You are either Nigerian or African, or you're not. You cannot be Arab in Nigeria. But they form this identity. So, and that's critical. And this is someone who has never left Nigeria. This is something that is critically affected by the Arab influence on Islam. I'm not sure if Arab influenced Islam or Islam influenced Arab, but Islam itself by nature is Arab.
Oh, so I had to mute myself. Yeah, I understand. It's hard to differentiate at the scale that it is at now to differentiate one from the other, because every other nations that became Muslim, you will see that they did away with their traditional clothing, with their colors, and start wearing those straight hijab, especially the women, the hijab and niqab and so on. That now, but now many nations are having a renaissance where they are banning, even though they are Muslim, the Arab style of modesty, where they are taking back their own cultural way of modesty. And I think it's about time people find meaning within their own cultural hemisphere instead of adopting everything that came with Islam. Fine, you accepted the religion, but must you accept the Arabic culture that came with it? And it's one thing that you can still eat your food. It doesn't necessarily have to be, a Muslim food, as many people say it. Islamic food. But you can still eat your food, because many African food are actually plant-based and vegan and vegetarian. You can still eat it. Which is something that I think I find to be funny.
Agree with Miss Becca here. I've this whole no African is Arab, no Arab is African. They are inseparable, Arab and Islam. No, that's not the case. As both religions evolved, both religions built populations within those countries. There's been wars pushing one another out, and the populations have evolved that way. But on a national level, you said yourself that there's a freedom of religion within your country, and with that, those Arabs that you're saying are Islam, they're all Islam. No, it's not the case. There's Christian Arabs. There's populations of them that are known. So that to say that is by definition bigotry, and that's that I take offense to.
No,
I think you're saying that as someone who's not African. Go to North Africa.
I want to say something to Scott. In many cases, most of the nations who were predominantly Christian or believe in other religions, and Islam came there, most of them have been subdued. Like, it's almost hard to be anything but Muslim. In those countries, you have to be a Muslim.
Shit, sorry, I got a call.
No worries. And in many cases, it's about survival. That one has to be a Muslim in order to be in those, survive within those nations. Purpose. It's been a while.
Yeah. Well, there's a saying that says things something like, what begins as language very well becomes behavior, and that behavior is contagious. We can't allow people that don't understand the struggle of the African identity and what it entails today to be. And no matter where we go in the world, even when we're in Africa, we're in America, in Europe, wherever, we're still labeled or we're still looked at a certain type of way, what is the end goal and the solution is to find a place where, which is the African continent, which we need to protect our homes. Everybody else initially, you can't let anybody come into your home right now, can you? And tell you how to run your household. So we can't let Arabs come into Africa and tell us how to run our country. And the biggest mistake, and I always say this, I'm gonna get a slap on the wrist for that one, but people mixing with the Arabs, and it's really terrible. I think that Black Africans really, this is the point where those kids are a product of destruction, and that destruction is growing. And also, there might be mixed race, and we understand they're part of each parent, agreeably, yeah. But that child is a problem. Sorry, I'm gonna name that child a problem, because they want to identify with themselves and with who they are, and with whichever parent is, and they would like to practice whatever that parent has taught them. We can't tell. The only thing we can do is save ourselves. We can save our home by protecting it. And even the Bible says the kingdom of God suffered violence. If we need to fight for Africa violently, let it be so. Because the Arabs are violent in nature.
Thank you. And if you even look at the African Muslims who go to Saudi Arabia for the biggest religious thing, I don't remember what it's called, just look at how they're usually treated.
Last time I found out, some of them were even sleeping outside,
They pay millions to go there. Like, Nigerians are obsessed with going to Saudi Arabia for these things, and they are treated so poorly. There was one I saw on social media. Even someone like Ashake is a global star. Did you see the way they treated him because he was trying to touch the wall? I don't know if any of you saw it. They are treated so poorly. And then somebody made a video about it, of how he went to Saudi Arabia. He spent so much money to go for jihad. I think that's what they call it. I don't remember what they call that. You know what I'm talking about.
Hajj.
And then, yes, Hajj. You know what a North African, you know what an Arab said to him? You are not Arab. You became, so you can never be a Muslim that is equal to them. So for me, because this religion was brought to Africa, and because North Africa was Black indigenous Africans that were eradicated, you can never tell me to accept that an African can be an Arab, because being an African is an identity, being an Arab is an identity. And you will never be able to call an African an Arab, where in contexts where you're told, no, you can't do that because you're not Arab. You can't stay in the hotel. They treated the women so poorly. These are people that paid, and this is a religion that we are all supposed to be equal. So if Black Africans were treated still like slaves, did Scott watch the Cup of African Nation? Did you see what the Arabs did to the African players, even on field? Did Scott know that a country won the AFCON, and AFCON, because AFCON is controlled by the Arabs, came out and said, yes, even if you won, was it Morocco? Morocco is still the winner. Did you watch it? No, we are not the same people. I'm sorry. As bigotry as it sounds, I want to sound bigotry. We are not the same. No African is Arab. No African is Arab.
Call. I had to take that. Sorry, I missed most of that conversation. I apologize. I have an emergency I have to go and attend, so I apologize. But I still like, you can't tell me that Arab Christians don't exist, because I met 4 of them the other day from Palestine.
I don't know, but it's different. But they always look. It's like having a white person who is Mormon, having a white person who is Catholic. So far as they are all within the same skin tone, it's okay. But so the moment one is darker tone, then it becomes an issue.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying it's we have to be careful generalizing, because when we cross over into the realm of bigotry, we start to lose credence in the words we're using. So,
I know what you're saying.
Have a great.
But since you're going,
I gotta run. It's a police emergency, so I gotta go. So have a great day, everybody. Sorry, I gotta run.
No problem. The the moment when Muslims have to pray, the first thing they have to check is whether the mosque is friendly to Africans first before they go, especially women. That alone speaks volume.
Um, the mayor of New York was born in Uganda. He's Muslim. He never identifies as an African. He identifies as a Muslim.
Thank you. Thank
Uh,
you.
this
The
the South
funny.
African white people are Afrikaners when it's convenient. They're Africans when it's convenient. They're not Africans. You can't tell people that have to bear the pain. I can never tell a woman what it's like to give birth. I will never know that.
Mhm.
We need to be respectful and understand people's pain and
Thank
people's
you.
experiences. We can't define people's experiences because we don't know what it looks like, or we might have an idea of what it looks like. You can sympathize, you can understand, but you will never know what it's like to wear a shoe. There's an African saying that says, the one that feels the weight is the one that carries the salt.
Mm. Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and I think we need to be careful about having these conversations from a very, very polarized perspective. Like, the issue of identity is the same everywhere. It's just like me, I'm a foreigner in Germany, and no matter how comfortable my life becomes, the nice and great people that I come to be in contact with in Germany, the nice experience I have, even if I have a German passport and purpose you're here, I'm sure you're German because even though you're black, your English sounds like you speak majority German. I, as an African person, I would never completely. I'm not delusional. I'm not one of those people that will say yes, but now I'm German. No, I'm an immigrant who was accepted, and because of that, there are many things as an African that I should seek to integrate. I'm one who's all for integration. I don't believe that I should live in this country and not speak the language. Because first of all, it makes my life easier. Secondly, I am living here. Do you understand? So I'm not going to come to the point where I think all of these things on it, or now I have a German pound, that means that it means nothing. If when I have children in this country, they will be African Germans, because even if they want to delude themselves to I'm a German, the world doesn't see you that way. So you shouldn't come to Africa and tell me that an Arab is no, you're not. You're not. You are not. And the very fact that we are having this subpopulation of people in Nigeria who are now calling themselves, oh, I'm Showa Arabs. Like, what are you doing in Nigeria? Please get out. Or if you want to be an immigrant, but don't expect me as a Nigerian to acknowledge you as a sub tribe, because you're not. You're not. That's what's happening in Sudan. And usually it starts like this, and very soon it will be that I, as a black African, have no right to exist in Africa. It sounds crazy. So we shouldn't. I'm sorry, Scott is a mixed race person who lives in Canada. His ideology or ways of understanding, it doesn't apply to the reality of how Africa works. If you watch that AFCON, I felt so upset about how those people were treating African players. These are players in the field. They were playing football. These people who invaded North Africa ran into the field. They were struggling with the goalkeeper for his towel. Please tell me, where is that normal? But this is what we're allowing in Africa. And when we have these conversations, we want to not sound, or we want people to like us or to be palatable so that we don't sound like, oh, we are politically incorrect. I don't care. The reality begs to differ. I don't care.
Well, I do agree with you, but it's been 3 hours, people. You know.
We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I muted myself. I was saying I do agree with you, but yet again, it's been 3 hours, and time do fly, fast, and it's like, you know. But next week, we'll be back, and I think since we've had a conversation of Arabization, I don't know. I want to do Westernization because that's it follows suits with Arabization. So or else someone
I
has more interesting
I think
topics.
no, not more interesting. I think you need to have this conversation again and invite those people.
Which people?
Like I'll find those people in Africa who think they're Arabs, invite them to come and have this conversation. We used to have so many of them. I'll try and see if I can find this. There was this particular boy from northern Nigeria, even though he has the privilege of living in a sane country like the UK, who was arguing about his Arab identity. I'm going to write him to come and explain this thing to you, the way he sees it, and you will see how warped his mindset is. Even though he's Western educated, was born in a Western world, lives in a Western world, and lives in sanity, he still believes, just on the mere fact that he's a Muslim, that he's Arab and he's a fucking Nigerian.
You know what is funny? I had this conversation similar to someone that was like a year and a half ago. He was a Muslim. I don't know whether he was Ghanaian. I think he was Ghanaian, but that was on someone else's life. And I asked him, as a Muslim that you believe is the best thing that's ever happened to you, what benefit has he ever brought to you in your life? And for some reason, he was shocked and stunned that no one has dared to ask him the question about benefit of being in a religion. He was shocked. He couldn't answer it. I'm like, exactly. So you are just existing within the ideology. You don't know what benefit it brings to you as a person. And he was like, how dare you ask me a question like that? I'm like, exactly. I trade in benefits, you know. And if you can't find what benefit your religion brings to you, then why do you believe? And I left it, and I haven't heard from him since then, because for some reason no one has ever asked him about how beneficial his religion is, you know. But do find them, and we are friends on TikTok, so you can always hit me up. Purpose and I, we do communicate on WhatsApp, so.
Sure.
So
Africa first.
if you do find those people, and then we can schedule next week's lives or around them, but then they have to come, and then we can have those conversations.
Yeah, I'll write them a message.
Do write them a message. It's been great having everyone participating, liking, sharing, gifting. It's always nice to learn something new, and I always do learn something new every time I'm on this live. So, until next time, people.
Thank you very much for having us today. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Have a lovely one, Miss Baker.
Have a lovely one, everyone.
Bye. Have a nice Sunday.